Welcome, traveller of the mind. Before we embark on our journey to the bottom of the world, let us first anchor ourselves in the sanctuary of the present moment. Feel the weight of your body sinking down, surrendering to gravity, held safely by the surface beneath you. The day is done. The noise of the world has faded into a distant hum, leaving only the quiet rhythm of your own breathing. Inhale deeply, filling your lungs with the cool, velvet air of the night, and exhale slowly, releasing every knot of tension, every lingering thought, every obligation. You're safe here. You're warm. Tonight I invite you to close your eyes and let your consciousness drift upward, floating out of your room, rising above the rooftop, and ascending into the star-dusted embrace of the cosmos. From this high vantage point, we look down upon our blue marble, turning slowly in the dark. We are drawn not to the green forests or the bustling cities of light, but to the south, to the great white silence, to Antarctica. Do not fear the cold. In this dream, the cold is not a sensation that bites or stings. It is a clarifying force, a crystalline purity that cleanses the mind. Imagine yourself wrapped in a blanket of starlight, immune to the frost, simply an observer floating over a landscape that has remained unchanged for eons. This is a place of ancient slumber, a continent the size of a kingdom of ice, resting under a sky that stretches into infinity. It is the most isolated place on Earth, a sanctuary of solitude where nature speaks in whispers of wind and ice. As you settle deeper into your relaxation, imagine the stillness of this place seeping into your bones. There is no urgency here. There is no time. There is only the eternal white, the deep indigo of the ocean, and the slow, majestic dance of the elements. Let your mind become as vast and uncluttered as the landscape we're about to explore. We will drift through this frozen garden, touching upon its secrets, one by one, flowing like a slow, hypnotic river under the ice. Let go. Let us begin our descent into the peaceful white void. As we touch down gently, we find ourselves in a landscape that defies logic, a place that seems to belong more to the red dust of Mars than to our own Earth. We have arrived in the dry valleys. Picture yourself standing on ground that is not covered in white, but is composed of rich chocolate brown earth and scattered black gravel. It feels alien, vast, and impossibly dry. For 2 million years, these valleys have known no rain, no snow, only the relentless sculpting of the air. Look around you in this strange, arid cathedral. The mountains that ring this valley are stripped bare, their jagged peaks rising like dark iron teeth against the pale blue sky. Without the softening blanket of snow, the geology is exposed in all its raw, ancient glory. You can see the layers of time etched into the rock face, bands of sandstone and dolerite that tell a story older than humanity itself. The ground beneath your feet is a mosaic of ventifacts, rocks that have been polished and carved into smooth geometric shapes by aeons of wind. There is a profound stillness here, a dryness that pulls the moisture from the air, preserving everything in a state of suspended animation. It is a natural museum of the Earth's skeleton. You feel a sense of awe at the resilience of this place. Even here, in the driest location on the planet, life persists in microscopic wonder, hidden within the very rocks you walk upon. But to the naked eye, it is a temple of stone and silence, a place where the earth is naked and unyielding. The visual contrast is striking. The deep browns and blacks of the valley floor set against the blinding white of the glaciers that hang suspended at the valley's edge, unable to descend, frozen in a perpetual pause. Drifting upward from the dry earth, we are caught in the embrace of the invisible force that keeps these valleys bare. We surrender ourselves to the flow of the katabatic winds. Imagine the air itself becoming heavy, dense, and cold, colder than the air at the coast. This heavy air forms high atop the polar plateau, the great dome of ice in the centre of the continent, As it cools, it becomes a river of atmosphere succumbing to gravity, beginning a long rolling slide down the slopes of the ice sheet toward the sea. Feel the sensation of this movement. It is not a chaotic gust, but a relentless directional flow, like a waterfall of air. You're floating within this stream, moving smoothly over the ridged ice, picking up speed as the terrain drops away. These winds are the breath of Antarctica, exhaling from its frozen heart. They scour the landscape, polishing the ice to a blue sheen, sweeping the snow into magnificent shifting dunes that mimic the sands of a desert. In your mind's eye, see the wind as a transparent current, shimmering slightly against the horizon. It rushes past the mountain peaks, pouring through the mountain passes with a low, mournful hum that vibrates through the ground. It is a powerful lullaby, a constant reminder of the forces that shape this world. You feel effortless as you ride this current, carried toward the coast, feeling the sheer power of gravity pulling the heavy, cold air down, 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 cleansing the landscape, sweeping it clean, leaving behind a pristine, polished world that sparkles under the polar sky. As the winds settle and the air clears, the sky above transforms into a canvas of celestial magic. We look up, and the darkness is no longer empty. It is alive. We are witnessing the aurora australis, the southern lights. Unlike their northern cousins, these lights dance over a wilderness with no spectators, a private performance for the silence of the pole. Picture a curtain of luminous velvet unfurling across the stars. The colours are not static, they breathe. Great ribbons of neon green twist and spiral, fading into edges of deep violet and soft bruised magenta. They ripple as if a giant hand is dragging a brush through the atmosphere. The movement is slow, hypnotic, and utterly silent. You watch as a band of emerald light stretches from one horizon to the other, forming a glowing bridge over the frozen continent. Imagine the reflection of these lights on the ice below. The endless white plains catch the green glow, turning the landscape into a dreamscape of soft alien hues. The snow sparkles with green fire. It feels spiritual, this connection between the solar wind and the magnetic field of the Earth. You are bathing in cosmic energy made visible. The lights shimmer and pulse, expanding and contracting like a beating heart in the sky. It is a reminder that even in the long polar night, there is light, there is colour, and there is a vibrant, silent energy watching over the world. Bathed in this celestial glow, our gaze drifts downward to the edge of the continent, where the land meets the sea. But here, the boundary is blurred by a massive floating plain. We have arrived at the Ross Ice Shelf. Visualize a flat white expanse so vast that it rivals the size of the country of France. It is not land, but a floating extension of the glaciers, a thick tongue of ice pushed out onto the ocean. As you float over it, the flatness is mesmerizing. It is a perfect, featureless horizon of white, stretching endlessly in every direction. It feels solid, immovable, yet it is rising and falling ever so slightly with the eternal rhythm of the tides deep beneath it. Move toward the edge, the great ice front. Here, the shelf drops sheerly into the dark, churning ocean. The cliffs of ice soar upwards, hundreds of feet high, vertical walls of white that gleam in the starlight. Peer closer at the face of the cliff. It is not just white, it is stratified with layers of blue. At the waterline, the ice is a deep sapphire blue, compressed by the weight of centuries. Higher up, it fades to a pale azure, then to turquoise, and finally to the blinding white of the fresh snow on top. It is a fortress of solitude, a barrier of immense beauty. You can hear the occasional groan of the ice, a deep, resonant bass sound as the shelf adjusts its weight, a reminder that this frozen world is dynamic, shifting, and alive in its own slow, geological time. Standing sentinel on this shifting platform, we find the masters of endurance. Huddled together against the vast white canvas, we see the emperor penguins. They are the only living souls brave enough to breed during the harsh Antarctic winter. Visualize a sea of tuxedoed figures standing upright, dignified and solemn. They are not scattered, but pressed tight against one another, forming a single large organism of warmth. Move into the center of the huddle in your imagination. Here, amidst the feathers and the down, the temperature is tropical compared to the freezing air outside. You can feel the collective body heat, a radiant warmth generated by thousands of beating hearts. It is a circle of cooperation. The birds on the outer edge, their backs dusted with frost, slowly shuffle inward, while those warmed in the centre slowly shuffle out, taking their turn to shield the group. It is a slow, rotating dance of survival and brotherhood. Look down at their feet. Balance carefully on top of their toes, tucked under a warm fold of abdominal skin, rest a single, precious egg. The fathers stand there for months, stoic and unwavering, protecting the future life of the colony. There is a profound sense of peace in their patience. They do not fight the cold, they outlast it together. Their soft calls to one another are gentle trills, a comforting murmuring that rises from the huddle, a song of life persisting in the heart of the freeze. Our journey now takes us from the surface, down through the miles of crushing ice, deep into the hidden dark. We are descending to a place that has been sealed off from the world for millions of years. We are entering the realm of the subglacial lakes, specifically Lake Vostok. Imagine passing through the solid ice, going deeper and deeper until suddenly the ice ends and you are floating in liquid water. It is pitch black here, a darkness so complete it feels like velvet against your skin. This is a lost world, a freshwater lake the size of a great inland sea, trapped beneath 2 miles of ice. The water is pristine, untouched by the atmosphere, isolated for aeons. Yet, it is not frozen. The immense pressure of the ice sheet above and the gentle heat radiating from the Earth's core below keep it in a liquid state. Float in this suspended void. It is the quietest place on Earth. There are no currents here, no wind, only the silent, heavy stillness of deep time. You're swimming in history. The water around you is the same water that existed before human beings walked the earth. It is a secret sanctuary, a hidden cathedral of liquid darkness where time has no meaning. The feeling is one of womb-like safety, a protective enclosure of ice shielding this precious hidden jewel from the chaos of the surface world. We rise slowly back through the ice, up toward the light, emerging at the terminus of the Taylor Glacier. Here, the white purity of the landscape is interrupted by a shocking, beautiful anomaly. We see the blood falls. Visualize a stark white wall of glacial ice, and pouring from a fissure within it is a slow, cascading stream of deep, rusty red. It looks like a wound in the ice, bleeding onto the frozen lake below. But this is not blood. It is the Earth's ancient chemistry on display. The water comes from a hidden pool trapped beneath the glacier, rich in iron and salt. As this ancient clear water reaches the surface and touches the oxygen in the air for the first time in millennia, it instantly oxidizes, turning this brilliant ruby red color. Watch the slow, viscous trickle of the red water staining the white ice. The contrast is artistic, vivid, and surreal. It paints a crimson fan across the snow, a splash of vibrant warmth in a monochrome world. It creates a stunning visual anchor, the white of the glacier, the grey of the rock, and the deep, rich ochre of the falls. It is a reminder that the Earth is constantly changing, reacting and breathing, even here at the end of the world. It is a slow-motion chemical reaction that has created a natural masterpiece of colour. Drifting further along the coast, we see steam rising into the freezing air, a plume of white mingling with the clouds. We approach Mount Erebus, the southernmost active volcano on Earth. It creates a paradox of fire and ice that the mind struggles to comprehend. Rise up the slopes of this great mountain, passing the colossal towers of ice, fumaroles that stand like chimneys, venting steam from the volcano's interior. Peer over the rim of the crater. Far below, glowing like a dragon's eye in the snow, is a permanent lake of molten lava. It churns and bubbles, a cauldron of orange and gold liquid rock. The heat radiating from it battles the intense cold of the air, creating swirling mists and crystals of ice that form instantly in the steam. The glow of the lava casts a warm orange light against the inner walls of the crater, a secret hearth burning in the wilderness. It is a heartbeat of fire within a body of ice. The sound is a low rhythmic thumping, the earth breathing, the popping of gas bubbles echoing softly in the crater. It feels ancient and primal, a direct connection to the fiery core of the planet. Despite the danger, there is a coziness to it, a source of heat that has burned steadily for decades, a lighthouse of warmth in the frozen dark. Turning away from the fire, we let the landscape widen again, and we focus now not on what we see, but on what we hear, or rather, what we do not hear. We immerse ourselves in the absolute silence of Antarctica. In our modern lives, true silence is a myth, always broken by the hum of electricity or the distant roar of an engine. But here the silence is a physical weight, a thick, luxurious blanket. Imagine standing on the high polar plateau. The wind has died down. There are no animals here, no flowing water, no rustling leaves. The silence is so profound that you can hear the rhythm of your own blood rushing through your ears. You can hear the sound of snowflakes colliding with one another as they settle on the ground. It is a silence that expands the mind, clearing out the clutter of noise. If you were to speak, your voice would not echo. The soft snow absorbs the sound instantly, swallowing it whole. It creates a sense of intimacy, of being the only consciousness in the universe. This silence is not lonely, it is peaceful. It is the sound of the earth resting. Let this silence wrap around you, dampening your thoughts, softening the edges of your awareness, bringing a deep, resonant calm to your spirit. Finally, as we rest in this silence, we notice the light changing, or rather, refusing to change. We are in the season of the midnight sun. Picture a sun that never sets, a golden orb that skirts the horizon, dipping low but never disappearing. Time loses its structure here. There is no night to mark the end of the day, only an endless golden afternoon. The light is distinctive, long stretched out shadows that paint the snow in shades of violet and blue. The sun casts a warm honey-coloured glow across the ice, making the crystals sparkle like millions of diamonds. It is the golden hour stretched out for months. You feel untethered from the clock. There is no rush to finish the day, for the day does not end. Watch the sun track a full circle around the sky, a slow celestial clock hand moving 360 degrees. It bathes the mountains in a constant shifting light, revealing textures and contours that change with every passing hour. This eternal sunshine feels energizing yet dreamlike, a suspension of the rules of reality. You're floating in a realm of perpetual light, where the sun stands guard, watching over the sleeping continent, bathing you in a soft, unending glow of warmth and gold. And beneath this unending golden light, the ocean becomes a gallery of floating cathedrals. We drift away from the shoreline now, moving silently over the water to witness the majestic procession of the tabular icebergs. Unlike the jagged, pointed bergs of the north, these southern giants are vast, flat-topped plateaus, carved from the immense ice shelves we visited before. Imagine seeing a pristine white table set for the gods, floating effortlessly upon the dark sea. Some are small, the size of a city block, while others are monstrous, stretching for miles, larger than entire islands, creating their own ecosystems, their own weather, their own sense of gravity. As you float near one of these white leviathans, observe the texture of its vertical walls. They rise hundreds of feet out of the water, distinct layers of snow pressed into ice visible like the rings of a tree. The sunlight hits the sheer face of the berg, and it glows with an inner luminescence, a radiant pearlescent white that seems to emit light rather than just reflect it. At the waterline, the sea has carved smooth concave caves into the ice, glowing with that familiar hypnotic sapphire blue. You can hear the water lapping gently against the ice, a rhythmic slapping sound and occasionally a deep resonating creak from within the structure, a groan of settling weight that vibrates through the water and into your very soul. It is a reminder of the immense scale of nature here, where blocks of ice travel like nomadic kingdoms across the southern seas, slowly melting, returning their ancient fresh water to the embrace of the salt ocean. This ocean that cradles the ice is a world unto itself, a distinct entity known as the Southern Ocean. It is the only ocean that flows completely around the globe, unobstructed by any landmass, creating the Antarctic circumpolar current. Visualize this current not as a violent torrent, but as a massive, slow-moving conveyor belt of water, the heartbeat of the world's climate. It acts as a liquid fortress, a moat that has protected the continent for millions of years, keeping the warm waters of the north at bay and locking Antarctica in its deep freezer. Sink beneath the surface of these churning indigo waves. The water is cold, hovering just near the freezing point, yet it is teeming with life and oxygen. It is a rich, nutritious broth that feeds the world. Feel the power of the flow here, a continuous clockwise rotation of water that moves more liquid than all the world's rivers combined. Being within this current feels like being held in the arms of a giant, rocked back and forth by the deep, powerful swells that have travelled unimpeded for thousands of miles. The surface may be whipped by winds, but down here in the deep, there is a heavy, rhythmic calm. It is the pulse of the planet, a circulation system that connects the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Indian Oceans, mixing everything together in a great, swirling cauldron of blue. It is endless motion, a perpetual cycle that feels eternal, hypnotic, and undeniably powerful. In the depths of this freezing, nutrient-rich water, a haunting song echoes through the gloom, a sound so alien it could belong to a creature from the stars. We are listening to the call of the Weddell Seal. These gentle giants with their mottled grey coats and large, dark, soulful eyes are the masters of the ice-covered bays. They do not roar or bark like other seals, they sing. Imagine floating in the dark water under the ice shelf and hearing a sound that begins as a long, descending trill, sliding down the musical scale like a synthesizer, followed by a series of rhythmic chirps and clicks. It is a sonic masterpiece, intricate and beautiful, vibrating through the water for miles. The sound is mesmerizing, a sci-fi lullaby played in the cathedral of the deep. Picture the seal effortlessly gliding through the water, its body streamlined and graceful, a stark contrast to its lumbering movement on land. It finds a breathing hole in the ice, sawing the edges with its teeth to keep it open, a portal between the two worlds of air and water. When they haul themselves out onto the ice, they lie on their sides, looking like grey boulders, smiling their permanent contented smiles, sleeping soundly on the frozen surface. There is a sense of pure contentment in their presence, a creature perfectly adapted to this harsh environment, finding comfort in the cold, singing their electric songs to the silence of the underside of the ice. We follow the seals back onto the solid ground, or what appears to be ground, and we realise that the surface we are standing on is merely the skin of a titan. We are atop the Antarctic ice sheet. It is difficult for the human mind to comprehend the sheer volume of what lies beneath your feet. This is not a thin layer of frost. It is a continent buried under a blanket of ice that averages over a mile in thickness. In some places, the ice plunges nearly 3 miles deep, a crushing weight that has actually depressed the bedrock of the continent into the Earth's mantle. Visualize layers upon layers of snow, falling year after year, century after century for millions of years. The snowflakes that fell when woolly mammoths walked the Earth are still here, compressed deep within this sheet. Imagine your consciousness sinking down through these layers, passing through history frozen in time. The pressure increases, squeezing the air out of the snow, turning it from white fluff to hard fern, and finally into solid blue crystal. This ice sheet holds 70% of the world's fresh water, a staggering reservoir of life locked away in a solid state. Standing on top of it, the horizon is a flat, endless white line, a desert of ice that creates a sense of infinite space. You're standing on the roof of the world, separated from the actual Earth by a vertical ocean of frozen water. The stability is profound, a solid, unmoving mass that anchors the planet's climate, a sleeping white giant that breathes slowly over millennia. Yet, even this all-consuming blanket cannot hide everything. Piercing through the white expanse like jagged islands in a sea of clouds, we see the nunataks. These are the lonely peaks of buried mountains, the tips of the highest summits that refuse to be swallowed by the ice sheet. Picture dark, jagged triangles of rock jutting out of the smooth white plain. They are stark, black and brown against the blinding white, creating a visual contrast that is sharp and beautiful. Fly towards one of these isolated peaks. It feels like a fortress of solitude, a place of immense resistance. The wind whips around these rocks, scouring them clean of snow, leaving the stone bare and exposed to the sun. Because they absorb the heat, these rocks create their own microclimates, tiny pockets of warmth in a freezing world. They are the only solid ground for hundreds of miles, a refuge for the few birds that venture this far inland. Stand on the summit of a nunatak and look out. You are above the ice, an observer on a rocky throne. The ice flows around the base of the mountain like a slow river, parting and rejoining, leaving the peak undisturbed. It is a symbol of endurance, of standing firm against the overwhelming tide, a solitary sentinel watching over the white void of the plateau. From the solid peaks we drift back toward the coast, to a place where the earth has collapsed in on itself, creating a secret harbour. We've arrived at Deception Island. From above, it looks like a perfect horseshoe ring of land in the dark ocean, a broken circle. This is the caldera of an active volcano flooded by the sea. Imagine sailing through the narrow entrance known as Neptune's Bellows, navigating the sheer cliffs to enter the calm, sheltered waters inside the volcano. Inside the ring, the contrast of colours is striking and moody. The beaches here are not white, but jet black, covered in volcanic ash and cinder. Steam rises gently from the shoreline, twisting into the cold air, revealing the heat that still slumbers beneath the sand. If you were to dig a hole in this black sand near the water's edge, the water that seeps in would be hot, a natural thermal bath at the edge of the Antarctic. The atmosphere is eerie and mystical, a mix of fire and ice, black and white, steam and fog. Abandoned structures from a bygone era rust silently on the beach, orange iron returning to the earth, claiming their place in the landscape. It feels like a lost world, a hidden sanctuary protected by the walls of the volcano, where the water is calm and the earth speaks in whispers of steam and sulphur. Soaring high above the volcanic rim, we catch the slipstream of the true monarch of these skies, the wandering albatross. Visualize a bird of immense proportions, with a wingspan stretching over 11 feet, the largest of any living bird. It is a creature of the air, designed for a life of endless gliding. It locks its wings in place, stiff and straight, and rides the ocean winds without a single flap, soaring for hours, even days, on the kinetic energy of the atmosphere alone. Join this magnificent bird in flight. Feel the weightlessness as you bank and turn, dipping the tip of a wing just inches above the crest of a rolling wave, then rising effortlessly back into the sky. The albatross is the spirit of freedom. It spends the first several years of its life entirely at sea, never touching land, sleeping on the waves and drinking the salt water. It belongs to the wind. Watching it, you feel a release of all effort. There is no struggle, only aerodynamics and grace. You are floating on the breath of the world, traversing thousands of miles of open ocean, a silent guardian of the southern seas, connected to the air currents as intimately as a fish is connected to the water. As we look down from the height of the albatross, Our eyes are drawn to patches of the ice sheet that glow with an intense electric hue. We are seeing the blue ice. This is not the white of fresh snow, nor the grey of dirty ice, but a deep, translucent turquoise that looks like a gemstone polished by the gods. This phenomenon occurs where the wind has scoured away the top layers of snow, exposing the dense, compressed ice beneath, and the angle of the sun penetrates deep into the crystal structure. The physics of this beauty creates a sensation of looking into a mirror of time. The ice absorbs the red end of the light spectrum and reflects only the blue, creating this mesmerizing colour. But it is not just the sight, it is the sound. If you were to chip a piece of this blue ice and drop it into a glass of water, it would snap and pop fizzily. These are not ordinary bubbles. They are tiny pockets of ancient atmosphere, air from 10,000, 20,000 years ago, that was trapped between snowflakes and compressed until it was pressurized. As the ice melts, the air is released, a microscopic explosion of history. You are breathing the same air that circulated before civilization began. The blue ice is a time capsule, a beautiful, hard, sapphire library of the Earth past, waiting to be read. Scattered across these fields of blue ice, we spot distinct, dark shapes that look out of place. They are small, black stones resting on the azure surface. These are meteorites. Antarctica is the world's greatest collector of space rocks. When meteors fall from the cosmos, they land on the soft snow and are buried. As the ice flows and churns over millennia, it eventually hits a mountain range and is pushed upward, where the wind strips away the layers, revealing these dark visitors from the stars. Picture yourself picking up one of these stones. It is cold, heavy for its size, and smooth, with a fusion crust formed by the heat of entering our atmosphere. It is a piece of Mars, or a fragment of the Moon, or a remnant of an asteroid belt sitting here on the bottom of the Earth. The contrast is poetic. The whitest, coldest place on our planet acts as a perfect velvet cushion to display these black, charred travellers. They are magnetic, pulling the needle of a compass, pulling the imagination toward the infinite. Holding one, you feel the connection between the ice under your boots and the vast, silent vacuum of space above. It is a meeting place of the terrestrial and the extraterrestrial, preserved in the deep freeze. And finally, on the rocky outcrops near these cosmic stones, we look closely, zooming in to the microscopic level, to find the most resilient life of all, the lichens and mosses. In a land where trees cannot grow and flowers are a distant dream, these tiny, colourful organisms create a miniature forest on the surface of the stones. They are the painters of the landscape, splashing the grey rocks with vibrant oranges, brilliant yellows, and deep, lush greens. Visualise these cryptogams clinging to the granite. They grow with excruciating slowness, perhaps only a millimetre every century, marking the passage of time in microscopic increments. They are dormant for most of the year, dried out and brittle, waiting for the brief kiss of summer meltwater to spring to life. When they do, they soften the harshness of the rock. Touch the surface of a moss bank. It feels like a cold, wet sponge, a patch of softness in a world of hard edges. These are the pioneers, the survivors that can endure being frozen solid and dehydrated, only to resurrect again and again. They remind us that life is stubborn, that it seeks a foothold in the most impossible places, turning the barren rock into a garden of microscopic beauty, a testament to patience and the enduring power of the small. And as we contemplate these tiny living specks of green clinging to the stone, we realise they are but faint echoes of a much grander, greener memory. If we could look deeper into the rock, past the living moss, and into the strata of the earth itself, we would find a ghost story written in stone. We uncover the mystery of the Antarctic fossils. Picture yourself crouching low on a windswept ridge, brushing away the loose gravel to reveal a slab of dark grey siltstone. Embossed upon its surface, perfect in every vein and contour, is the fossilised imprint of a leaf. It is a leaf from the Glossopteris tree, a deciduous plant that flourished here 250 million years ago. Hold this stone in your mind's hand. It is cold and heavy, yet it tells a story of warmth. It whispers of a time when this frozen desert was a lush, temperate rainforest, teeming with life. Imagine standing in this exact spot eons ago. The air is thick and humid, smelling of damp earth and decaying vegetation. Towering trees stretch toward a sun that sets in the normal rhythm of day and night. Giant ferns brush against your legs, and the sounds of prehistoric insects fill the air. The discovery of these fossils is a jarring, beautiful paradox, evidence of a tropical paradise locked inside the world's largest refrigerator. It invites you to feel the deep cyclic nature of our planet, understanding that even the most permanent ice is just a phase in the long, slow breathing of the Earth. This fossilized leaf is a key, a puzzle piece that connects this isolated land to a family long since separated. It guides our awareness to the ancient supercontinent of Gondwana. Let your mind expand backward through the corridors of deep time, speeding up the movement of the tectonic plates until the continents slide like rafts on a slow-moving river. Distinct land masses merge. South America, Africa, Australia, India, and Antarctica drift together, locking into place to form a single colossal landmass in the southern hemisphere. Feel the unity of this great continent. In this era, you could walk from the rainforests of Brazil to the outback of Australia without ever crossing an ocean, passing through the heart of Antarctica on your way. It was the spine of the world, but then feel the slow, inevitable tearing, the deep rifts forming in the earth, the violence of separation as the plates pulled apart. Antarctica was left alone, drifting slowly southward, moving away from the warmth, isolating itself at the bottom of the globe. As it severed its ties with South America, the ocean rushed in to encircle it, cutting it off from the tropical currents, sealing its fate in ice. Visualizing this drift gives the continent a sense of tragic majesty, a lonely queen who drifted away from her siblings to rule over a kingdom of white silence. The remnants of this geological violence are still visible today, rising like a jagged spine through the center of the ice. We turn our gaze now to the Transantarctic Mountains. This is not merely a range of peaks. It is a continental divider, a chaotic wall of rock that stretches for over 2,000 miles, separating the heavy, high plateau of East Antarctica from the lower, unstable ice of West Antarctica. Fly along this boundary in your imagination. The scale is difficult to grasp. These mountains are buried up to their waists in ice. The glaciers here do not just flow around the mountains, they flow through them, carving deep, spectacular gates in the rock. The peaks themselves are dark and sedimentary, layered like a blackened cake, contrasting sharply with the blinding white rivers of ice pouring through the valleys. It looks like a battleground where the Earth is fighting to keep its head above the rising tide of the cryosphere. The visual is stark. Horizontal black bands of rock against vertical white pillars of ice. It is a place of dramatic tension, a silent war between the stone that wants to rise and the ice that wants to bury it, frozen in a stalemate that has lasted for millions of years. Rising from this great dividing range, we ascend higher, seeking the very crown of the continent. We approach the Vinson Massif, the highest point in Antarctica. At nearly 16,000 feet, it is a sentinel of the sky. Imagine the air thinning as we climb the slopes, the blue of the sky deepening into a near-purple void. This is not a sharp, singular spire like the Matterhorn, but a massive, hulking cathedral of ice and rock, a fortress that dominates the Sentinel Range. Standing on the summit, you're standing on the apex of the bottom of the world. The view from here is one of terrifying beauty. You look out over a sea of clouds and lower peaks, a jagged ocean of white waves frozen in place. The silence here is different. It is thin, sharp, and absolute. The sun glints off the summit ridge with a blinding intensity. You feel a sense of profound detachment, as if you have left the Earth and are standing on a platform halfway to space. The curvature of the planet seems visible from here, the horizon bending away, emphasizing the isolation. It is a place where human ego dissolves. dwarfed by the sheer vertical magnitude of the ice. You're a tiny speck of warmth on the shoulder of a frozen giant, witnessing the world from a throne of eternal winter. We descend from the high peaks, drifting out onto the vast, flat expanse of the polar plateau. Here, the ground is not smooth. It is textured, sculpted by the relentless hands of the wind. We look down to see the sastrugi. These are the waves of the solid ocean. The wind, blowing constantly from the same direction, carves the hard-packed snow into sharp, irregular ridges and grooves. They look like frozen dunes, or the turbulent surface of a storm-tossed sea that was instantly turned to stone. Some are small, merely ripples around your boots. Others are human-sized, great formidable archways and irregular shark fins of ice. Imagine walking across them. It is not like walking on soft snow. It is like walking on white concrete. Your boots make a hollow, crunching sound. The light plays across these ridges, creating a landscape of high contrast. Brilliant white crests and deep blue shadows in the troughs. They are beautiful but treacherous, a chaotic, frozen texture that stretches to the horizon. They are the fingerprints of the wind, physical proof of the invisible force that scours this land day after day. Running your hand over a ridge of sastrugi, it feels polished and hard, like marble, eroded into aerodynamic shapes that offer the path of least resistance to the gale. As we stand amidst these frozen waves, the air around us begins to glitter. We're not witnessing snow, but something more delicate, more ethereal. We're immersed in diamond dust. The sky above is completely clear, a pristine, cloudless blue, yet the air is filled with millions of tiny floating crystals. This occurs when the temperature drops so low that the moisture in the air freezes instantly, skipping the liquid phase entirely. It is like walking inside a snow globe filled with glitter. The crystals are so fine they drift rather than fall, hanging suspended in the atmosphere. As the sunlight hits them, they sparkle with prismatic colours, tiny flashes of red, green and gold dancing in the air around you. It feels magical, a weather phenomenon that belongs in a fairy tale. There is no storm, no wind, just this silent, shimmering curtain of light. Breathe in this glittering air, it is sharp and dry. The visual effect is soft and diffusing, softening the harsh horizon, making the brutal cold look like a shower of jewels. It is a reminder that beauty here takes forms unknown to the rest of the world, turning the very air you breathe into a spectacle of light. And as the sun shines through this mist of diamond dust, it creates a geometry of light in the sky, a celestial illusion known as parhelia, or sundogs. Look toward the horizon, where the pale sun hangs low. Flanking it on either side like loyal guardians are two phantom suns, bright spots of light connected by a luminous halo that encircles the true sun. This is nature's optics at work. The hexagonal ice crystals in the air act as millions of tiny prisms, bending the light by exactly 22 degrees. The result is a holy trinity of light, a gateway in the sky. The mock suns shimmer with rainbow hues, red on the inside, fading to blue on the outside. It gives the impression that you're on another planet in a system with 3 stars. The sight is arresting, demanding a pause. It feels spiritual, a sign of alignment and harmony in the atmosphere. The halo is perfect, a ring of pale fire against the blue, framing the desolate landscape in a circle of glory. You watch as the phenomenon slowly shifts with the angle of the sun, a silent, slow-motion kaleidoscope played out on the largest screen imaginable. Our gaze drops from the haloed sky to the ice beneath our feet once more. We realise that this ice is not just a solid surface, it is a library. We focus on the concept of ice cores. Imagine a drill, a hollow cylinder boring down deep into the heart of the ice sheet, pulling up a long, perfect column of ice. This cylinder is a transparent scroll of history. Look closely at the core held up to the light. It is banded with distinct layers, summer snow and winter dust, like the rings of a tree, but stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. but the true magic lies in the bubbles. Trapped within the ice are tiny pockets of ancient air, samples of the atmosphere from the time of the Romans, the time of the pyramids, the time of the Neanderthals. As you look at these bubbles, you're looking at the breath of the past. Scientists melt this ice to read the chemical composition, reconstructing the climate of the Earth's history. It is a frozen archive, a backup drive of the planet's memory. There is a profound sense of connection here. The realization that the snow falling today will one day be a message for the future, just as the ice deep below is a message from the deep past, preserved in the cold, dark silence, waiting to be read. We follow the history of the ice to the edge of the continent where the cliffs meet the sea. Here, flying like a spirit against the dark rock, is the snow petrel. This bird is the embodiment of Antarctic purity. It is completely white, with black coal eyes and a small black beak. It is the only bird that is pure white, allowing it to vanish completely against the snow. Watch it fly. It is erratic and fluttering, like a large white butterfly or a falling snowflake that has learned to steer. It nests in the crevices of the high cliffs, deep inland, sometimes flying hundreds of miles just to feed. There is something ghostly about its presence. You might not see it until it moves, a phantom peeling itself away from the ice. It symbolizes the resilience of life in the face of the void. It does not seek warmth. It bathes in the snow. It nests in the rock. It hunts in the freezing waters. Seeing a snow petrel feels like seeing a good omen, a flicker of life that refuses to be darkened by the starkness of the landscape. It is a winged piece of the glacier itself taking flight. The petrel dives toward the water, seeking the treasure that fuels this entire ecosystem. We dive with it, plunging beneath the surface to witness the swarms of Antarctic krill. These are not merely shrimp. They are the biomass engine of the Southern Ocean. Visualize a cloud of pink and red in the deep blue water, a swarm so dense it blocks out the light from above. There are trillions of them, a living galaxy of tiny crustaceans. They are bioluminescent, possessing small organs that emit a faint light, meaning the ocean at night sparkles with the glow of billions of tiny stars. They move in synchronized waves, a collective intelligence driven by currents and food. They are the foundation, the bottom of the pyramid upon which all other Antarctic life rests. Without them, the seals, the penguins, the birds and the whales would vanish. Floating amongst them, you feel the sheer abundance of life. It is not a barren ocean. It is a soup of vitality. The water feels thick with existence. You're witnessing the grand banquet of the South, a massive, swirling pink life force that converts the energy of the sun and the algae into food for the giants. And now, rising from the depths to meet this feast, comes the largest creature to ever live. We're in the presence of the Antarctic blue whale. No description of size can truly prepare you for the reality. It is a living submarine, growing up to 100 feet long, its heart the size of a small car, its tongue heavier than an elephant. Feel the water displace as it approaches. It is not a monster, it is a gentle god. Its skin is a mottled blue-grey, glowing turquoise when seen underwater. It moves with a slow, hypnotic grace, its massive tail fluke propelling it with effortless power. Watch as it opens its mouth, a cavernous expansion of pleated throat, engulfing tons of water and krill in a single gulp. Then the water is pushed out through the baleen plates filtering the food. But more than the sight, it is the sound. The blue whale's call is the loudest sound made by any animal, a low-frequency pulse that can travel for hundreds of miles underwater. You feel it in your chest more than you hear it with your ears, a deep, rhythmic vibration that resonates through your body. It is the heartbeat of the ocean. Being near one, you feel a sense of profound humility and peace. This ancient intelligence swimming slowly through the freezing dark is the true master of this domain. It is a lonely, majestic wanderer, singing its deep songs to the void, a living mountain of flesh and blood thriving in the coldest water on Earth. The reverberations of the blue whale's song fade slowly into the crushing depths, leaving a silence that is heavy and thick with potential. We remain here, in the abyssal plains beneath the ice, where the water is not merely cold, but supercharged with life-giving oxygen. The extreme cold allows the ocean to hold vast amounts of dissolved gas, creating a unique biological magic known as polar gigantism. Drift along the silt of the seafloor, where the darkness is absolute, save for the faint bioluminescence of passing jellies. Here, we encounter creatures that defy the proportions of the surface world. Observe the Antarctic sea spider. In warmer oceans, these creatures are microscopic, barely visible to the naked eye. But here, in this oxygen-rich bath, they have grown to the size of dinner plates. Watch as one moves across the ocean floor. It is a creature of pure legs, a skeletal, articulate geometry walking in slow motion. Its movements are hydraulic, deliberate, and unhurried. Because the metabolic rate in this freezing water is so slow, life unfolds at a leisurely pace. The spider does not scuttle, it strides with the elegance of a stilt walker. There is a dreamlike quality to this scale, a feeling of being shrunk down in a land of giants. Alongside the spiders we see isopods, relatives of the common garden woodlouse. But here they are the size of a human shoe, armoured and ancient, crawling over the rocks like prehistoric tanks. This slow-motion world is peaceful. There is no frantic energy, only the quiet, rhythmic expansion of life taking advantage of the rich, cold blood of the ocean. It is a reminder that nature, when left alone in the cold, creates monsters that are not fearsome, but fragile and magnificent, expanding into the space that the silence affords them. Suspended in this same darkness, hovering weightlessly above the giants of the seafloor, we sense a presence that is more myth than animal. We are entering the domain of the colossal squid. This is not the giant squid of sailors' lore, but something even more massive, a true phantom of the Antarctic deep. Visualize a creature as long as a school bus, its body a mantle of soft reddish-pink flesh that ripples like a curtain in the current. Focus on its eyes. They are the largest eyes in the entire animal kingdom, the size of basketballs. In the pitch blackness, these eyes are not passive. They are hungry for the faintest glimmers of light. They are biological telescopes, evolved to spot the ghostly silhouette of a predator or prey against the dim glow of the surface far above. Drifting near this silent leviathan, you feel the intelligence behind that unblinking gaze. It hangs in the water, motionless, conserving energy, a master of the waiting game. Its tentacles are armed not just with suckers, but with swiveling hooks, ancient tools for grasping in the void. Yet despite its terrifying arsenal, the creature moves with a fluid, balletic grace. It is a lonely king, patrolling a kingdom where the pressure would crush a submarine, living its entire life in the secret dark. To imagine the colossal squid is to embrace the unknown, to accept that there are massive thinking beings sharing our planet that we may never see, existing in a parallel world of shadow and crushing depth. From the crushing depths, a strange phenomenon begins to descend, a finger of ice reaching down from the surface like a frozen stalactite. We are witnessing the formation of a binnacle, the finger of death. This occurs when sea ice forms on the surface, pushing out the salt. The remaining water becomes a super-chilled, incredibly salty brine that is denser than the seawater below it. Watch as this brine begins to sink. Because it is colder than the freezing point of the surrounding water, it freezes the seawater instantly upon contact. A hollow tube of ice forms around the sinking plume of brine, growing downward inch by inch toward the seafloor. It looks like a crystalline vine growing in time-lapse, a delicate white structure extending into the blue gloom. When this icy finger finally touches the sandy bottom, the magic turns deadly and beautiful. The ice spreads rapidly outward, a creeping web of white frost that travels across the seafloor. Watch the slow motion freeze as it encases the starfish and the urchins in a tomb of ice. It is a silent, creeping winter that captures a moment in time perfectly. The visual is haunting, a white river of ice flowing underwater, freezing everything in its path, creating a garden of frozen sculptures on the ocean bed. It is a reminder of the delicate balance of physics here, where cold is a dynamic, moving force that can reach down from the world above to touch the world below. We follow the brine's density back up, rising through the water column until we break the surface. But we do not find ourselves on the open ocean. We surface within a miracle of open water amidst the solid pack ice, a phenomenon known as a polynya. Imagine flying over a limitless expanse of white frozen ocean and suddenly seeing a dark, jagged tear in the fabric of the ice, a lake of open water that refuses to freeze. These are the breathing holes of the continent. They're kept open by the fierce katabatic winds pushing the new ice away as soon as it forms, or by upwelling warm water from the deep. To the wildlife, a polynya is an oasis in a desert. Visualize the steam rising from the dark water, meeting the freezing air and creating a wall of sea smoke. It looks like a cauldron, mist swirling and dancing over the black waves. The contrast is stark, the blinding white solidity of the pack ice surrounding this dark, churning eye of water. It is a hub of activity. Whales surface here to breathe, their spouts shooting up into the mist. Seals haul themselves out onto the edges. It is a grand meeting place, a vital lung for the ecosystem. The sound of water lapping against the edge of the ice is magnified here, a wet, rhythmic slapping that signifies life. Floating above a polynya feels like finding a secret harbour, a refuge of fluidity in a world that has hardened into stone. On the edge of this open water, waddling with a singular comical purpose, we find the Adelie penguins. But we're not watching them swim, we're witnessing a ritual of tenderness. We focus on the pebble gift. In a land entirely covered in ice and snow, a small loose stone is the most precious currency in existence. The penguins need these stones to build their nests, raised platforms that keep their eggs out of the melting slush. Watch a male penguin as he searches the rocky shoreline. He is fastidious, picky, turning over stones with his beak until he finds the perfect one, smooth, round, and the right size. He picks it up, waddling back to his chosen mate with the stone held gently in his beak. He approaches her, bowing low, and places the stone at her feet. It is a silent proposal, a gesture of provision and care. If she accepts, she places the stone into the nest and they bond. The scene is heartwarming and incredibly human. Thieves are common. Watch as one neighbour slyly steals a stone from another's nest while their back is turned, a silent comedy playing out on the rookery. But the overwhelming feeling is one of industry and devotion. The clicking sound of thousands of beaks tapping stones, the shuffling of feet, the endless rearranging of the rocky homes. It is a city of stones built on love and survival, a testament to the fact that even in the harshest place on earth, the instinct to build a home and care for a partner remains the driving force of life. Leaving the noisy, stony city of the penguins, we drift inland, crossing the Transantarctic mountains once more, to a place that shouldn't exist. We arrive at the Don Juan Pond. This small, shallow body of water in the right valley holds a baffling secret. It is the saltiest body of water on Earth, far saltier than the Dead Sea. Because of this intense salinity, the water never freezes, even when the air temperature drops to 50 degrees below zero. Stand at the edge of this ankle-deep pond. The water is not blue. It is a heavy, syrupy fluid that looks almost like oil. It does not ripple easily in the wind because of its density. Around the edges there is no snow, only a crust of white salt crystals that crunch underfoot. It feels like an alien landscape, a puddle of liquid water on a planet where water should be rock. There is a stillness here that is unnerving. No ice forms on the surface to muffle the sound or reflect the light. It just sits there, a liquid eye staring up at the sun, defying the laws of the climate. It is a place of chemical extremity, a natural laboratory that scientists study to understand water on Mars. Being here feels like standing on the edge of the impossible, witnessing a rebellion of chemistry against physics, a small, stubborn pool of water that refuses to turn to ice, no matter how cold the night becomes. Beneath the surface of the great ice sheet that surrounds these valleys, deep underground, lies a secret mountain range that no human eye has ever seen. We turn our mind's eye to the Gamburtsev subglacial mountains. Imagine a mountain range the size of the European Alps, jagged peaks, deep valleys, soaring summits, completely buried under 2 miles of solid ice. They are the ghost mountains of Antarctica. We only know they exist because of radar that can see through the ice, painting a digital picture of the rock below. Visualize these peaks in the dark, crushed under the weight of the glacier. They have been entombed for millions of years, preserved perfectly in their jagged youthful state, protected from the erosion of wind and rain. It is a humbling thought. Entire landscapes, vast and majestic, existing in total darkness, silent and unseen. It adds a layer of depth to the white flatness above. When you stand on the flat ice plateau, you're actually standing on top of a mountain peak, separated by a vertical ocean of ice. It creates a sense of vertigo, a realization that the surface is a mask, hiding a complex, rugged face beneath. These mountains are the skeleton of the continent, holding up the ice sheet, a secret grandeur that the Earth keeps to itself, wrapped in a cold, white blanket. Drifting back toward the coast, we witness the birth of the ice itself. We observe the formation of fragile ice. As the ocean temperature drops, the water begins to thicken. It does not freeze into a sheet immediately. Instead, it turns into a soupy suspension of tiny, needle-like crystals. Look at the surface of the sea. It loses its shine, taking on a matte, oily appearance like liquid grease. The waves do not break. They undulate sluggishly, heavy with the weight of the crystals. This is the ocean hesitating, caught between liquid and solid. The sound is different here, a soft hissing whisper as the crystals rub against one another. Dip your hand into this slush in your imagination. It is not hard like ice, nor fluid like water. It is a soft, shifting semi-solid, a chaotic collection of millions of individual frozen sparks. It swirls in beautiful, complex patterns, tracing the currents of the water. It is the primal soup of the cryosphere, the very first step in the creation of the massive ice shelves we saw earlier. It feels temporary, transitional, a delicate state of becoming that covers the dark ocean in a soft grey skin. As the fragile ice thickens and the ocean swells move through it, the slush begins to clump together, forming distinct circular pads. We are now seeing pancake ice. Visualize thousands of white circular lily pads of ice floating side by side on the dark water. They bump gently against one another in the swell, and this constant collision raises a small rim of ice around the edge of each circle, making them look like giant white pancakes. The visual is incredibly satisfying, a tessellated mosaic of circles stretching to the horizon. They rise and fall with the breathing of the ocean, a flexible armour that protects the sea. The sound is a gentle, rhythmic clacking, like bamboo wind chimes, as the hard edges of the pancakes tap together. Occasionally a seal will punch through a thin spot between the pancakes to breathe, shattering the pattern for a moment before it closes up again. As the temperature drops further, these pancakes will freeze together to form a solid sheet. But for now, they are individuals, dancing a synchronized bobbing dance on the waves. It is a playful, geometric phase of winter, turning the ocean into a vast, moving puzzle of white circles. Finally, we let our minds expand beyond the ice, beyond the mountains, to the human concept that governs this land. We embrace the spirit of the Antarctic Treaty. This is the only continent on Earth that has no borders, no military, and no owners. It is a distinct terra nullius, a nobody's land. Feel the weight of this peace. Everywhere else on the planet is divided by lines on a map, claimed by flags and defended by armies. But here, the flags are only markers of science. There are no passports needed to walk across the snow. There are no guard towers, no fences. The weapons here are prohibited. The only explosions allowed are the popping of ancient air bubbles in the ice. Visualize the entire continent as a sanctuary, a cathedral of nature dedicated to peace and discovery. It is a place where nations that might be enemies elsewhere work side by side, sharing food and data in the harsh cold. The atmosphere is one of shared survival and curiosity. To step onto Antarctica is to step out of the political world and into the natural world. It is a refreshing, cleansing thought. A massive landmass held in trust for humanity. A white canvas where we've agreed to lay down our conflicts and simply listen to the wind. It is the quietest, most peaceful political statement in history, written in ice. Within this sanctuary of peace, where the land belongs to no one and everyone, humanity has constructed its own strange, futuristic nests. We turn our gaze to the architecture of the research stations, specifically the marvel of Halley 6. Visualize a string of bright red and blue modules connected together, standing high above the white plane on hydraulic legs. It looks like a caravan of sci-fi train cars or a dormant spaceship resting on the ice. There is a brilliant functional beauty to this design. The station stands on skis. As the snow accumulates and rises, threatening to bury the station, the hydraulic legs extend, lifting the entire building up, keeping it safe above the drifts. And when the ice shelf it stands on moves too close to the edge of the sea, the entire station can be towed by bulldozers to a safer location. Imagine being inside one of these modules. The walls are thick, insulated layers of steel and foam, separating the cozy, warm interior from the 50 below zero wind outside. The windows are triple-glazed viewports looking out onto the alien landscape. Inside, there is the hum of conversation, the smell of coffee, the soft glow of reading lights. It is a capsule of warmth and logic in a world of chaos. To live here is to live in a machine that mimics a living organism, walking on legs, adjusting its height, keeping its inhabitants safe in the belly of the beast. It creates a feeling of profound safety, a warm, technological womb protected against the wildest elements on Earth. Far inland from these coastal stations at the very axis of the globe, we find a singular, modest monument that marks the bottom of the world. We're standing at the geographic South Pole, but this point is not a fixed rock. It is a drifting location on a shifting sheet of ice. Because the ice sheet flows over the bedrock below at a rate of about 10 meters a year, the pole marker actually moves. Visualize the ceremonial pole marker, a simple metallic rod topped with a brass sphere, surrounded by the flags of the treaty nations flapping in the thin, cold air. Every year, on New Year's Day, the staff of the station must calculate the new, true location of the pole and physically move the marker to its new home. It is a slow, ritualistic dance with the planet. The old markers are left behind, a line of brass stakes stretching out across the snow, marking the passage of time and the movement of the ice. Standing here, you are at a point of singularity. If you were to walk just a few steps in any direction, you would be walking north. There is no east or west here. The cardinal directions collapse into one. It is a place of geometric purity, the pivot point upon which the entire world spins. You feel a sense of centeredness, of being anchored at the very root of the earth, holding the planet steady with the weight of your boots. The wind here blows from every direction and no direction all at once, and you stand in the eye of the global storm perfectly still. At this exact spot, the concept of time itself begins to dissolve. We contemplate the convergence of time zones. In the rest of the world, time is determined by longitude, by where the sun sits in the sky relative to your location. But here, at the pole, all the lines of longitude converge and meet at a single point. Imagine a pie sliced into 24 pieces, and you're standing in the center where all the tips touch. In a single circular stroll, taking only 24 steps, you can walk through every time zone on Earth. You can step from yesterday into tomorrow and back again in seconds. Because the sun rises only once a year and sets only once a year, the clock becomes an arbitrary human invention. The scientists here choose a time zone simply for convenience, usually to match the schedule of the supply planes from New Zealand. But in your mind, feel the freedom of a place where it is simultaneously midnight in London, noon in New York, and dawn in Tokyo. The tyranny of the schedule fades away. You're standing in the forever now, a place where the ticking clock loses its authority, replaced by the slow, seasonal breathing of the year. It allows your mind to detach from the urgency of minutes and hours, floating instead in a timeless state of being. As the sun finally dips below the horizon after its long summer vigil, the continent undergoes a dramatic transformation. We enter the season of the polar night. This is not merely a dark evening, it is a darkness that lasts for months, a heavy velvet curtain drawn across the sky. But do not fear this dark. It is a time of incredible celestial beauty. With no light pollution for thousands of miles and no moisture in the air to haze the view, the sky becomes a three-dimensional vault of diamonds. The Milky Way is not just a streak, it is a textured river of light, so bright it casts faint shadows on the snow. You can see the dark dust clouds of the galaxy, the depth of the universe opening up above you. For the people staying the winter overs, this is a time of introspection and community. The station becomes a cozy submarine in a sea of night. Outside, the world is painted in shades of indigo and charcoal. The moon becomes the primary source of light, turning the ice fields into a landscape of silver and pewter. There is a quiet majesty to this long night. It feels like the earth is hibernating, sleeping deeply, and you are a guardian of its slumber, watching the slow rotation of the Southern Cross overhead, finding comfort in the absolute consistency of the dark. High above this dark world, in the upper reaches of the atmosphere, a rare and spectral phenomenon begins to form. We look up to see the nacreous clouds. These are not the fluffy water vapour clouds of the lower sky. These are stratospheric clouds of ice crystals that form only when the temperature drops to extreme lows, far colder than the surface. They're often called mother-of-pearl clouds, and the name is perfect. Because they are so high, they catch the light of the sun from below the horizon, long after the ground is in darkness. They glow with an ethereal, iridescent light, swirls of pastel pink, electric green, and soft, oil-slick violet. They look like giant, shimmering oyster shells painted across the black sky. Watching them feels like witnessing a hallucination or a glitch in reality. They're ghostly and silent, moving slowly in the high-altitude winds. They are beautiful but dangerous, acting as a chemical surface that depletes the ozone, a reminder of the fragility of our atmosphere. But visually, they are pure magic, a celestial oil painting that glows in the dark, reminding you that even in the deepest winter, the sun is still there, just below the edge of the world, sending its light up to kiss the stratosphere. We lower our gaze from the stratosphere back to the dark, churning waters of the coast, where the pack ice breaks apart. Here, moving with a synchronized intelligence that rivals human cooperation, we find the orcas, specifically the Type B Antarctic killer whales. These are the wolves of the sea, clad in striking black and white, but their movements are fluid and gentle. Visualize a pod of these majestic creatures patrolling the ice edge. Their breathing is rhythmic, a collective whoosh of mist rising from their blowholes as they surface in unison. They are hunting a seal resting on an ice floe, but they do not attack with teeth. They attack with physics. Watch as they line up, shoulder to shoulder, swimming in perfect formation toward the ice. At the last second, they duck under the floe, flicking their massive tails to generate a calculated wave. The water rises up, washing over the ice, gently knocking the sleeping seal into the sea. It is a display of sophisticated fluid dynamics, a learned culture passed down through generations. To watch them is to watch a ballet of heavy bodies. They are curious, often raising their heads out of the water, spy-hopping to look at you with intelligent dark eyes. There is no malice, only the calm, efficient focus of apex predators who have mastered their frozen domain, turning the ocean currents into their tools. Contrasting with the social, pack-hunting orcas is the solitary dragon of the ice. We encounter the leopard seal. If the Weddell seal is the puppy of the south, the leopard seal is the serpent. Visualize a creature that is 10 feet of sinew and muscle, with a reptilian head and a mouth that opens impossibly wide. Its coat is grey and spotted, allowing it to blend perfectly with the dappled light of the shallow water. Underwater, its grace is hypnotic. It does not use its flippers to swim like other seals. It uses long, sweeping strokes of its powerful forelimbs, flying through the water like a bird. It is silent and stealthy. It often patrols the edges of the penguin colonies, waiting in the shadows. But when it is sated, it is a curious, almost playful observer. There are stories of leopard seals bringing gifts of exhausted prey to photographers, trying to teach the clumsy humans how to hunt. Picture this massive creature floating near you, blowing bubbles, tilting its prehistoric head. It feels ancient, a survivor from an epoch when monsters ruled the seas. It commands respect. To see one gliding through the kelp and ice is to see evolution honed to a razor's edge, a beautiful, lonely hunter patrolling the cold blue silence. Shifting our focus from the fauna back to the flora, we discover that the snow itself is not always white. In the height of the Antarctic summer, along the coastal melt zones, we find the phenomenon of snow algae, often called watermelon snow. As the sun warms the snowpack, microscopic algae that have been dormant in the ice wake up and bloom. They produce a red pigment to protect themselves from the intense UV radiation of the sun. The result is a surreal landscape where the snowfields are brushed with streaks of raspberry pink and blood red. It looks as if a giant artist has spilled watercolours across the glacier. If you were to kneel down and press your boots into this pink snow, you might notice a faint, sweet scent, sweet like crushed fruit. It is a sensory confusion. Your eyes see snow, your skin feels cold, but your nose smells summer. It is a reminder that life is opportunistic, turning even the freezing water crystals into a garden. These blooms are transient, appearing for a few weeks and then vanishing under the fresh winter snow, a fleeting blush of colour on the pale face of the continent. Buried deeper within the glaciers, far from the surface blooms, lies a hidden world of light and structure. We enter the ice caves. These are formed by the heat of fumaroles near volcanoes, or by the flow of meltwater streams carving tunnels through the glacier. Step inside one of these caverns. The world outside disappears, replaced by a luminous sapphire twilight. The walls are not flat. They are scalloped and textured like the inside of a golf ball, smoothed by the warm air currents. The ice is so thick and dense that it filters out every colour of the spectrum except for blue. You're standing inside a gemstone. The acoustics here are cathedral-like. The drop of a single bead of water echoes like a bell. The air is still, humid, and surprisingly warm compared to the exterior. It feels like a secret sanctuary, a womb of ice. The light seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, radiating from the walls themselves. It is a place of profound spiritual quiet, where the chaotic weather of the surface cannot reach, and you are held in the blue, suspended breath of the glacier. Finally, we pull back to consider the continent as a whole, not for what it contains, but for what it does for the rest of us. We contemplate the albedo effect. Antarctica is the Earth's white shield. Because the snow and ice are so brilliant, so perfectly white, they act as a giant planetary mirror. Visualize the sunlight streaming through space, hitting the surface of the continent. Instead of being absorbed and turning into heat, as it would in a dark forest or a blue ocean, 80% of that solar energy is bounced instantly back into space. It is a rejection of heat, a deflection that keeps the entire planet cool. Feel the power of this reflection. It is a silent, passive act of protection. Without this white cap at the bottom of the world, our oceans would rise and our air would burn. The continent is a guardian, dressed in white, deflecting the sun's intensity to maintain the delicate balance of life everywhere else. It is a shimmering, blindingly bright shield, working tirelessly every day simply by being white, simply by being cold. It is the global thermostat, and as you drift over its bright surface, you feel a sense of gratitude for this vast frozen reflector that keeps our world livable. From the protective brilliance of the white surface, our awareness rises once again to the upper limits of the sky, to the invisible shield that guards this frozen kingdom. We turn our attention to the ozone layer. For decades, we have known this part of the atmosphere as a place of fragility, a hole caused by human industry. But now visualize it not as a wound, but as a healing scar. High in the stratosphere, miles above the ice, the chemistry of the planet is shifting. The seasonal thinning of the ozone, which allows ultraviolet light to wash over the continent, is shrinking. Imagine the atmosphere as a living, breathing skin of the Earth. Slowly, year after year, the molecular weave is knitting itself back together. It is a slow-motion success story, a planetary healing process that is taking place silently above the clouds. Feel the thin, crisp air up here. The return of the ozone means the return of balance. It is a protective canopy, a ceiling of gas that filters the sun's intensity, ensuring that the plankton in the ocean and the moss on the rocks are not scorched by the cosmic radiation. It is a reminder that the Earth is resilient, that it has the capacity to repair itself when given the chance. Watching this invisible layer thicken is like watching a fever break, a restoration of health to the southern sky that safeguards every living thing beneath it. Drifting down from the clarity of the stratosphere, we descend into a weather phenomenon that erases all definition, blurring the line between the Earth and the sky. We enter the white embrace of a whiteout. In the human world, we rely on shadows and horizons to tell us where we are. But here, when the cloud cover is thick and the light diffuses perfectly through the snow, the horizon simply vanishes. Imagine standing in a void of pure, milky luminosity. The ground is white, the sky is white, and there is no shadow to tell you which is which. It is a sensation of total suspension, as if you are floating in a tank of light. You cannot tell if you're standing on a hill or a flat plain. You might feel as though you are flying. Do not feel lost, feel liberated. In a whiteout, the visual clutter of the world is wiped clean. There is no depth, no distance, only the immediate here and now. It is a form of sensory deprivation that turns inward, forcing the mind to quiet itself because there is nothing outside to focus on. It is a peaceful, blank canvas, a moment where the universe wraps you in cotton wool, softening the edges of reality until you are simply a consciousness floating in an infinite pale glow. As the air clears and the wind falls silent, the moisture on the surface of the new sea ice begins to crystallize into one of nature's most delicate miracles. We zoom in to witness the blooming of frost flowers. These are not plants, but intricate structures of ice that grow on the surface of the frozen ocean, like a sudden, crystalline meadow. Visualize a field of dark, new ice, smooth as glass. Scattered across it are thousands of fragile, fern-like clusters of white crystals, each one about the size of a rose. They form when the atmosphere is much colder than the ice, pulling moisture into these elaborate salty shapes. They are incredibly high in salinity, concentrating the salt from the ocean water. If you were to breathe on one, it might shatter, so delicate is its construction. They sparkle in the low angle of the sun, turning the dark sea into a garden of diamonds. It is a transient beauty. A strong wind will wipe them away in seconds. But for this moment, they stand as a testament to the creative power of the cold, building complex flower-like geometry out of nothing but water vapor and salt. A silent, frozen botany that blooms only in the deepest chill. Where the wind does not sleep, but instead whips across the surface of the freezing ocean with relentless energy. It creates a texture that is far more rugged and armoured. We observe the formation of dragon skin ice. This rare and striking phenomenon occurs when strong winds buffet the forming sea ice, refusing to let it settle into a flat sheet. Picture the surface of the water covered in scales. The ice looks like the armoured back of a great white reptile. Each scale is a plate of ice, lifted and stacked against its neighbour by the gale, freezing in place to create a rough, impenetrable texture. The shadows cast by these scales give the ocean a depth and complexity, a topographic map of the wind's fury frozen in time. Run your mind's hand over this surface. It is not smooth, it is jagged, protective, and tough. It is the ocean shielding itself, hardening its skin against the elements. It is a chaotic beauty, a visual record of the struggle between the fluid water and the freezing air. Seeing miles of dragon skin ice stretching to the horizon makes the ocean feel like a living, breathing beast, ancient and armoured, slumbering under the polar sky. Breaking through this armoured surface with a sharp, exhalant whoosh, a sleek, dark form emerges. We are joined by the Antarctic minke whale. Unlike the colossal blue whale, the minke is the sports car of the cetacean world. Small, fast, and intensely curious. Visualize this sleek hunter threading its way through the cracks in the pack ice. They are the masters of the tight squeeze, finding breathing holes that larger whales could never reach. They have a pointed, sharp snout that breaks the water like a knife. Watch as one performs a spy hop, raising its head vertically out of the water to look around. Its dark eye meets yours. There is a playfulness here. Minkes are known to follow ships darting back and forth under the hull, seemingly for the sheer joy of speed. In the vast, lonely silence of the pack ice, the minke is a spark of energy. They remind us that the ice is not a barrier, but a playground. Hearing the sharp, quick sound of their breath in the stillness is a rhythmic reminder of life's agility, a quick pulse of warm blood darting through the freezing labyrinth of the sea. Leaving the dynamic life of the coast, we travel inland, deeper and farther than we have gone before, to the most remote point on the entire continent. We arrive at the pole of inaccessibility. This is not the South Pole. It is the point on the continent that is mathematically furthest from any ocean in any direction. It is the heart of the void. Imagine a place where the isolation is absolute. You're thousands of miles from the nearest wave, the nearest ship, the nearest penguin. The silence here is older than the pyramids. Standing here, you're at the geometric centre of the ice, the most difficult place to reach on the planet. In the 1950s, a Soviet expedition reached this spot and left a small bust of Lenin on a chimney facing Moscow. Today, it is buried almost entirely by the creeping snow, a ghost of history swallowed by the white. But the feeling of this place transcends politics. It is the feeling of being a singular point of consciousness in an ocean of white static. It is a place of extreme purity, where the world of humanity feels like a distant dream. To stand here is to conquer distance itself, to find peace in being the furthest thing from anywhere, wrapped in the ultimate solitude. From this place of absolute emptiness, we drift back through time to a place where the human presence is preserved in perfect frozen stasis. We enter the sanctuary of Scott's Hut at Cape Evans. Built in 1911 by the explorer Robert Falcon Scott, this wooden cabin stands today exactly as it was left over a century ago. Step inside and let the door latch click behind you. The howling wind is instantly silenced. The air inside is cold, but still. Your senses are immediately overwhelmed by the smell, not of rot but of history. You smell the rich, smoky scent of seal blubber, the faint aroma of pipe tobacco, and the distinct nostalgic smell of old paper and leather. Because of the extreme cold, nothing decays here. Look at the shelves. There are tins of biscuits, bottles of condiments, and stacks of newspapers from Edwardian England, all looking as if they were placed there yesterday. A pair of reindeer skin boots sits by a bunk waiting for feet that will never return. It is a cathedral of memory. You feel the presence of the men who lived here, their hopes and their camaraderie. It is not a sad place. It is a cosy one, a wooden womb that protected them against the blizzard. It serves as a time machine, allowing you to stand in the stillness of the past, witnessing the endurance of the human spirit preserved in the ice. From the solemn history of the explorers, we fly north to a tiny island on the peninsula that offers a warmer, more whimsical connection to the world. We land at Port Lockroy, home of the Penguin Post Office. Visualize a cluster of black buildings with bright red trim, nestled on a rocky shore surrounded by glaciers. But the humans are not the owners here, the Gentoo penguins are. Picture the colony surrounding the buildings, nesting on the front porch, waddling past the windows. The air is filled with their trumpeting calls. Inside the main building, there is a small, functioning post office, the southernmost in the world. Imagine writing a postcard here, your hand resting on the wooden counter. You stamp it with a penguin motif. You drop it into the red box. That small piece of paper will travel from this frozen edge of the world across the Southern Ocean to a warm mailbox somewhere far away. It is a beautiful thread of connection. The juxtaposition of the cosy domestic ritual of mail with the wild, rugged landscape outside creates a feeling of warmth. It is a tiny outpost of civilization where penguins and people share the same rocky beach, sending messages of love across the miles. Amidst the rocks where the penguins nest, we notice a splash of vibrant green that seems impossible in this monochrome world. We are looking at the Antarctic hairgrass, Deschampsia antarctica. Along with the Antarctic pearlwort, these are the only two flowering plants native to the continent. Zoom in on a tussock of this grass growing in a sheltered crevice of rock. It is not tall, it grows in low, dense clumps to hide from the wind. But it is green, a rich, photosynthesizing green that speaks of summer. Look closely, and you will see tiny, delicate flowers hidden within the blades. This grass is a warrior. It can withstand freezing, being covered in salt spray and being buried in snow for months. When the sun returns, it reawakens, turning its face to the light. Seeing this splash of botanical life against the grey granite and white ice is startling and hopeful. It is a reminder that life will always find a way to bloom, even at the edge of existence. It is a tiny green flag planted in the rock, declaring that this continent is alive. And finally, living within the damp mosses that grow beside the grass, we find the true master of survival, the microscopic titan known as the tardigrade. We shrink down, smaller and smaller, until we are exploring the microscopic water droplets caught in the leaves of the moss. Here we meet the water bear. Visualize a tiny, chubby creature with 8 legs, moving with a lumbering, bear-like gait through the water. It looks endearing, almost cuddly, despite being microscopic. But do not let its appearance fool you. This is the toughest animal on Earth. If the moss dries up, the tardigrade curls into a ball, expelling all the water from its body and turning into a dormant ton. In this state, it is indestructible. It can survive the vacuum of space, crushing pressure and intense radiation. It can sleep this way for decades, only to wake up and walk away the moment a drop of water touches it again. Watching this tiny being trundle through its mossy jungle, you feel a sense of awe at the tenacity of life. It teaches us that strength does not always look like a giant whale or a mountain. Sometimes true invincibility is microscopic, patient, and hidden in a patch of green moss on a frozen rock, waiting quietly for the perfect moment to wake. From the microscopic resilience of the water bear hidden in the moss, we expand our vision, pulling back from the tiny crevice to behold the massive volcanic foundation upon which it sleeps. We are hovering over Ross Island. This is not merely a piece of land, it is a monument to fire born from the freezing sea. While Mount Erebus smokes and breathes with active fire, we turn our gaze to its silent, sleeping brother, Mount Terror. Do not let the name frighten you. It is named for a ship, not a feeling. Visualize this extinct volcano, its cone distinct and perfect, shrouded in a blanket of permanent white. It stands as a guardian of the past, its fires long extinguished, leaving behind a legacy of black basalt and quiet majesty. The contrast here is a visual feast for the resting mind. the deep obsidian black of the volcanic rock jutting out from the blinding white snow. It is a monochrome world of stark beauty. Imagine the history locked within this stone. Millions of years ago, this rock was liquid magma, exploding into the freezing air, hissing as it met the ice. Now it is silent. The wind scours its flanks, polishing the old lava flows into smooth sculptures. Standing near its base, you feel the solidity of the earth, the heavy, grounding presence of the mountain that anchors the floating ice shelf nearby. It is a place of deep geological slumber, where the violence of creation has settled into an eternal frozen peace. Leaving the heights of the volcanic peaks, we travel across the continent to East Antarctica to experience a sensation of depth that rivals the ocean trenches. We're floating above the Denman Glacier, but our mind's eye sinks far, far below the surface. We are descending into the deepest canyon on land, the Bedman Glacier Trough. If we could strip away the ice, we would see a canyon so deep it would swallow the Grand Canyon whole. The floor of this valley sits more than 2 miles below sea level. It is the lowest point on continental Earth, a secret abyss hidden entirely from view. But it is not empty, it is choked with ice. Visualize the sheer weight of the glacier filling this trough, a river of ice miles thick, grinding slowly against the bedrock deep in the dark. Feel the pressure and the silence of this depth. Down there, in the roots of the glacier, the ice is under such immense crushing force that it behaves like a slow-moving plastic. It is a world of absolute darkness, where the rock has not seen the sun for eons. Hovering above it, you feel a sense of vertigo, an awareness of the miles of frozen water beneath your feet, filling a wound in the Earth's crust. It is a reminder of the hidden dimensions of this continent, where the true landscape is buried, waiting in the dark, preserving the shape of the Earth as it was before the Ice Age began. From the crushing depths of the glacier, we return to the coastline, where the land meets the sea in a chaotic, noisy celebration of life. We find ourselves on a rocky beach occupied by the heavyweights of the seal kingdom. We're in the presence of the southern elephant seals. Forget the grace of the leopard seal or the cuteness of the Weddell. The elephant seal is a creature of magnificent bulk and raw power. Visualize the beachmasters, the massive males, weighing up to 4 tons, heavier than a large truck. They lie on the beach like boulders of flesh, their skin a rough landscape of scars and molting fur. Watch them as they breathe. Their sides heave with a slow rhythmic expansion, and steam rises from their bodies into the cold air. They are shedding their skin, a process that looks uncomfortable, causing them to huddle together in great warm piles of blubber to speed up the molting. The smell is earthy and musky, the scent of wild animals living on the edge of the world. Occasionally a male will raise his head, inflating the large trunk-like proboscis that gives the species its name, and unleash a roar that creates a drum-like resonance in your chest. It is a primal sound, a deep guttural belch of dominance that echoes off the cliffs. Yet, when they sleep, they are peaceful giants, their large dark eyes closed, snorting softly, warm and heavy against the freezing pebbles. They are monuments to the success of blubber, living proof that warmth can be sustained through sheer mass. Drifting away from the heavy slumber of the seals, we move to the open snowfields where the wind is the only artisan. Here, we witness a rare and delicate meteorological phenomenon, the snow rollers. These are not man-made snowballs, but natural cylinders of snow sculpted by the gale. Visualize a pristine white plain where the snow is slightly sticky and the wind is strong but not violent. The wind catches a small chunk of snow and begins to roll it. As it rolls, it gathers more layers, just like a rolling carpet. But unlike a snowball, the center is often blown out, leaving a hollow tube, a perfect white donut, or a Swiss roll made of ice crystals. They are scattered across the landscape like discarded toys of the wind giants. Some are the size of a fist, others are as large as a barrel. They're incredibly fragile. If you were to touch one, it would crumble into dust. They sit there, casting long, hollow shadows on the snow, transient sculptures that exist for perhaps only a few hours before the wind changes or the sun melts them. Seeing a field of snow rollers feels like stumbling upon a secret art gallery, where the invisible hands of the atmosphere have been at play, creating geometry out of chaos. Leaving the surface art behind, we return to the South Pole, but this time we look neither at the horizon nor the sky. We look down, deep into the ice, to a facility that uses the glacier itself as a scientific instrument. We are visiting the Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory. Imagine a grid of sensors like pearls on a string, lowered into holes melted nearly 2 miles deep into the clear, dark ice. These sensors are waiting for a ghost. They are hunting neutrinos, tiny, nearly massless particles that travel from the exploding stars and black holes at the edge of the universe. These particles pass through the Earth all the time, billions of them passing through your hand right now, unnoticed. But here, in the pure, ultra-transparent ice of the deep pole, occasionally a neutrino collides with an atom of ice. When it does, it emits a faint, eerie blue flash of light known as Cherenkov radiation. Visualize this silent blue spark occurring a mile beneath your feet in the total darkness. The sensors catch this flash, recording a message from the cosmos. It is a profound concept, using the ice of the bottom of the world as a telescope to look back into the history of the universe. The laboratory on the surface is quiet, filled with the hum of computers, but the real action is happening in the silent, frozen depths. It feels like a connection between the microscopic and the infinite, a trap set in the ice to catch the whispers of the stars. The silence of the ice is deep, but it is not absolute. As the temperature plummets in the evening, or as the glaciers shift their weight, the Earth speaks. We listen now to the phenomenon of icequakes, or cryoseisms. In the dead of night, when the air is still and the thermometer drops to 60 below, the surface of the ice contracts rapidly. The tension builds until the ice can no longer hold it, and it snaps. Boom! The sound is like a cannon shot or a thunderclap rising from the ground. Feel the vibration travel through the soles of your boots. It is a sharp, percussive jolt that startles the silence. It is not a tectonic earthquake from deep below. It is the skin of the planet reacting to the cold. Following the boom, there is a deep, settling groan, a long sigh of the glacier adjusting itself. To experience an icequake is to realize that the ice is not a dead solid. It is a material under stress, constantly moving, shrinking, and expanding. The sound echoes across the flat plateau, a lonely reminder of the immense physical forces at play. It adds a heartbeat to the landscape, a rhythmic cracking that marks the passage of the cooling night. From the cracking surface of the plateau, we fly north to the open water, to a body of water so pristine it is often called the last ocean. We are drifting over the Ross Sea. This massive bay is the most untouched marine ecosystem left on Earth. Visualize water that looks exactly as the ocean did 1,000 years ago. There are no plastic bottles here, no oil slicks, no shipping lanes. The water is a deep, nutrient-rich ink blue, teeming with life that has evolved in isolation. Because of the currents and the ice cover, this sea has been protected from the interference of humanity. Drifting over it, you feel a sense of time travel. This is the primordial ocean. Below the surface, the food web is intact. From the microscopic algae to the colossal squid to the toothfish and the whales. It is a living laboratory of how nature functions when left alone. The air above the water smells only of salt and cold. The feeling is one of sacred purity, a vast blue wilderness that demands nothing from us but to be left alone. A sanctuary where the ocean remembers its original state. And speaking of the air, we take a moment to focus purely on the act of breathing. We are inhaling the cleanest air on Earth. At the atmospheric monitoring stations such as Cape Grim or the South Pole, scientists measure the particles in the air. In a city, there are thousands of particles per cubic centimetre. Here, there are often almost none. Close your eyes and visualize drawing this air into your lungs. It feels different. It has no taste, no scent of dust, no pollen, no exhaust. It is chemically pure oxygen and nitrogen, scrubbed clean by the thousands of miles of ocean and the filtering effect of the polar vortex. It feels sharp, bracing, and incredibly light. It wakes up the senses. When you exhale, you see your breath float away in a perfect white cloud, dissipating into the atmosphere without leaving a trace. Breathing here feels like drinking from a mountain spring. It is refreshing and detoxifying. It is a sensory reset, allowing you to experience the atmosphere in its most elemental form, invisible and flawless. In this pristine air and water, we witness a display of intelligence and cooperation that rivals any human dance. We watch the humpback whales engaging in bubble net feeding. Unlike the orcas with their waves, the humpbacks use air as a tool. Visualize a group of whales diving deep into the dark green water. They locate a swarm of krill. Then, swimming in a spiral formation upward, they begin to exhale. A curtain of bubbles rises toward the surface, forming a cylindrical net that traps the confused krill inside. From the surface, you see a perfect circle of green bubbles erupting on the calm water. It is a geometric pattern, a Fibonacci spiral of air. Then, the water boils. The whales lunge upward through the center of the bubble net, their mouths open wide, swallowing the feast. But listen closely. Before they surface, they sing. It is a feeding call, a coordinated vocalization that synchronizes the group. It is a haunting, trumpeting sound that vibrates through the hull of a boat or the ice nearby. To witness this is to see a masterclass in teamwork, a ritual practiced for millennia. The sudden transition from the quiet circle of bubbles to the explosion of life is breathtaking, a celebration of abundance in the cold sea. Finally, as the feast concludes and the whales begin their migration north, we notice the sky changing. The eternal day of summer is fading. We're entering the midnight twilight. This is the shoulder season, the brief magical autumn when the sun finally dips below the horizon for a few hours each day, but not far enough to create true night. The resulting light is a photographer's dream, a golden hour that lasts for 6 hours. The sky turns a bruised purple, fading into bands of apricot, rose, and deep indigo. The shadows on the snow stretch out, becoming miles long, painting the white landscape in stripes of blue and gold. The temperature drops rapidly as the sun vanishes, and the snow surface begins to crystallize and sparkle. The world feels suspended in a state of beautiful melancholy. It is the end of the party, the closing of the curtain. The light is soft, lacking the harsh glare of noon, wrapping the continent in a gentle pastel blanket. It is a time for the scientists to pack up, for the animals to migrate, a visual signal that the great dark winter is coming to tuck the continent in for its long sleep. You stand in this purple twilight, feeling the quiet acceptance of the turning cycle, watching the colours fade slowly into the peace of the coming night. As the purple bruise of the twilight deepens into a darker indigo, the atmosphere plays one final vertical trick on our eyes. We witness the formation of light pillars. In the freezing still air, millions of flat hexagonal ice crystals hang suspended, drifting horizontally like tiny mirrors. When the moon rises, or when the distant lights of a research station glow against the horizon, these crystals catch the light and reflect it, not as a diffuse glow, but as a perfect vertical column. Visualize tall, distinct shafts of light stretching from the ground straight up into the heavens. They look like the bars of a celestial cage, or the spotlights of a silent stage. They can be white, golden, or even deep red depending on the source. They do not waver like the aurora. They stand still, architectural and precise. Walking through a field of light pillars feels like walking through a forest of luminous trees that have no substance. You can pass your hand through them, yet they remain, towering over the ice. It is a moment where the air itself becomes a canvas, revealing the hidden geometry of the cold, turning a single point of light into a pillar of fire that connects the ice to the stars. We turn our gaze from the light standing on the horizon to the clouds hanging low above the sea. Here, the sky acts as a map for the sailor. We observe the phenomenon of the ice blink. In the treacherous Southern Ocean, seeing what lies ahead is a matter of survival, but the pack ice is often hidden behind the curvature of the Earth. However, the clouds know. Look up at the underside of the low, heavy stratus clouds. Over the open, dark water, the clouds appear dark, absorbing the lack of light from the deep sea. This is called a water sky. But over the sea ice, the clouds glow with a distinct creamy white luminescence. The ice below acts as a giant reflector, bouncing the white light up to paint the belly of the clouds. This blink is a warning and a guide. It is a ghostly mirror in the sky, a white signal flare that tells the voyager, here lies the frozen solid. To the early explorers, this glow was a sign of danger and a sign of hope. It creates a sensation of the world being interconnected, where the sky and the sea are in constant communication, mirroring each other's state. You're navigating the ocean by reading the language of the clouds. Moving inland from the coast, we find ourselves traversing a landscape that feels flat, yet hides a massive secret. We're walking across the Antarctic megadunes. These are not the sharp, shifting dunes of the Sahara, but waves of snow so vast and so slow that they are invisible to the naked eye standing on the ground. These dunes can be miles wide and hundreds of feet long, but their slope is so gentle it is imperceptible. You only realise they exist when you look at the texture of the snow. One side of the dune is soft and accumulating fresh powder. The other side is hard, glazed and wind-scoured blue ice. There are ripples in the fabric of the ice sheet formed over centuries. To cross them is to rise and fall on the breathing of the continent without even knowing it. They create a strange acoustic and visual effect, stripes of roughness and smoothness that stretch for hundreds of miles. From space, they look like the fingerprints of the wind. On the ground, they are a reminder of the scale of time here. A single dune takes years to migrate just a few inches. You're walking on waves that are frozen in time, a slow-motion ocean of snow that has been rolling across the plateau for millennia. As we walk across the harder, glazed surfaces of these dunes, we might kick a piece of ice, sending it skittering across the frozen lake. Listen closely. We hear the phenomenon of acoustic dispersion. In the normal world, a stone hitting the ground makes a dull thud. But here, on the tense, resonant skin of the ice sheet, the sound is transformed. The impact creates a high-frequency vibration that travels faster through the ice than the lower frequencies. The result is a sound like a sci-fi laser blaster, a sharp pew-pew or a descending metallic cheer-up sound. It is a whimsical electronic noise produced by nature. Visualize skipping a stone across a frozen lagoon. Each skip produces a musical note, a futuristic ping that echoes and disperses through the crystal lattice. It sounds like the ice is singing, or like a synthesizer played by the cold. It is a moment of pure auditory playfulness, a reminder that the ice is under tension, tight as a drum skin, waiting to translate any impact into a song of frequency and vibration. Leaving the singing ice of the interior, we return to the drifting pack ice to meet the most populous yet strangely named mammal of the south, the crab-eater seal. Despite their name, they do not eat crabs. They are the great filter feeders of the seal world. Drift close to one of these slender, pale seals resting on a floe. They are often scarred, bearing the parallel rake marks of the leopard seal attacks they survived in their youth. But the true marvel is hidden inside their mouths. Visualize their teeth. They are not simple pegs, they're intricate serrated sculptures. Each tooth has multiple cusps, fitting together like a perfect jigsaw puzzle. When the seal takes a mouthful of krill-rich water, it closes its jaws and pushes the water out through the gaps in its teeth. The teeth act as a biological sieve, trapping the tiny krill inside. It is a masterpiece of evolutionary design. There are millions of these seals in the Antarctic, more than all other seal species combined. They are the grazing herds of the pack ice, moving in sync with the seasons. Watching them, you feel a sense of abundance, a realization that the singular, specialized design of a tooth can unlock the energy of an entire ocean, supporting a population of millions in a place that looks empty. The water that supports these seals is not always the deep indigo we expect. Near the edges of the great glaciers, the ocean takes on a milky turquoise luminescence. We are seeing the suspension of glacial flour. As the massive rivers of ice grind their way down from the mountains, they act as sandpaper, crushing the bedrock beneath them into a fine, microscopic powder. This rock dust is carried by the meltwater into the sea. Because the particles are so fine, they do not sink immediately. They float, catching the sunlight and scattering the blue and green spectrums. The result is a halo of bright, tropical-looking water surrounding the frozen coast. It looks like liquid opal, but this is not just paint, it is food. This rock powder is rich in iron and minerals, a vitamin shake for the ocean. Where the white cloud of flour meets the dark sea, life explodes. Plankton bloom, krill swarm, and the food web ignites. It is the earth feeding the sea. Floating through this milky water feels like swimming in a cloud, a hazy, nutrient-rich fog that blurs the line between the stone of the land and the salt of the deep. Far away from the life-giving waters, in the driest recesses of the Right Valley, we stumble upon a sight that is both macabre and peaceful. We find the mummified seals. These are the bodies of craybeater or Weddell seals that centuries ago took a wrong turn. They travelled inland, perhaps confused by the light or the landscape, moving further and further away from the water until they laid down to rest on the dry, cold gravel. But they did not decay. The air here is so dry, the cold so sterile, and the wind so constant that bacteria cannot function. The seals are freeze-dried, preserved perfectly in their final pose. You can see the texture of their skin, the whiskers on their snouts, the curve of their spine. Some of these travellers have been here for 2,000 years. They look like statues carved from old leather and wood. There is no smell, no rot. They are simply part of the geology now. Standing beside one, you do not feel horror, you feel a sombre reverence. They are monuments to a journey that ended in silence. They are time capsules preserved by the harsh kindness of the climate, guarding the valley floor in an eternal stony sleep. In the same valley where life seems impossible, we look closer at the sandstone rocks. To the naked eye, they are barren brown boulders. But if you were to crack one open, just a few millimeters beneath the surface, you would find a distinct emerald green stripe. We have discovered the cryptendoliths, the hidden life inside the rock. Here, inside the stone, is a microscopic ecosystem of fungi and algae. The rock itself acts as a greenhouse. It is translucent enough to let a tiny amount of sunlight filter through to the algae, but solid enough to protect the organisms from the freezing wind and the UV radiation. It absorbs the heat of the sun, keeping the interior just a few degrees warmer than the air, enough for life to persist. Imagine the tenacity of a life form that chooses to live inside the geology. It is a hidden forest in the stone. It changes how you see the landscape. The mountains are not dead, they are armoured shells for life. You're walking through a valley of the living rocks, where the biology is hiding, huddling in the microscopic spaces between grains of sand, enduring the ages in secret. As the long night begins to reclaim the sky, we look upward to find our bearings. In the northern hemisphere there is a star that sits still, Polaris. But here in the south, there is no single star to mark the pole. Instead, we look for the kite-shaped constellation, the Southern Cross, Crux. Visualize these 4 bright stars burning intensely against the velvet black. They are the smallest of the 88 constellations, yet the most distinctive. They have guided Polynesian voyagers, European explorers and modern scientists for centuries. To find south, you must draw an imaginary line from the top star through the bottom star and extend it out into the dark void 4 times its length. It is an active navigation, a mental geometry played out on the night sky. The cross stands as a celestial anchor. It rotates around the pole, a clock hand in the heavens. Watching it spin slowly through the long polar night gives you a sense of the Earth's rotation that is palpable. You're standing on the bottom of a spinning top, looking up at the markers of the universe, feeling the grand, slow turning of the galaxy around you, and at the very centre of this spinning world, near the South Pole Station, there lies a designated zone of silence known as the Dark Sector. This is not a place of evil, but a place of purity. It is an area where all radio transmissions, Wi-Fi and radar are strictly forbidden. Walk into this zone in your mind. The silence here is electromagnetic. The scientists here are listening to the faint whispers of the early universe, the cosmic microwave background radiation. To hear the echo of the Big Bang, they need the Earth to be quiet. Here, you are cut off from the digital noise of humanity. There is no static, no signal, only the wind and the stars. It is a sanctuary for the ears of the machines. Standing here, in the shadow of the great telescopes, you feel a connection to the origins of time. The ice is a shield, the cold is a filter, and the silence is a lens. It is a place where we stop talking to one another so that we can listen to the story of how the universe began, catching the oldest light in existence as it falls on the cleanest snow on Earth. From the listening silence of the Dark Sector, where the oldest light in the universe touches the ice, we allow our awareness to drift northward, carried by the high-altitude winds toward the tip of the Antarctic Peninsula. Here, the silence is broken by the groaning of giants. We have arrived at the Antarctic Sound, known to the sailors of these waters as Iceberg Alley. Picture a narrow corridor of dark, churning ocean, flanked by the continent on one side and islands on the other. But the water is not open. It is crowded with a majestic procession of colossal icebergs. These are the tabular giants that have broken free from the Weddell Sea, drifting north to their doom. They're not merely floating chunks of ice, they are cathedral-sized islands, flat-topped and sheer-sided, gleaming with a blinding whiteness against the steel-grey sky. Navigate your way through this labyrinth in your mind. The scale is disorienting. You are a speck floating between walls of ice that rise dozens of stories high. The air here is colder, radiating off the millions of tons of frozen fresh water. The water between the bergs is a slurry of crushed ice and smaller growlers, pieces of debris that hiss as they melt. The visual variety is stunning. Some bergs are pristine and white, others are weathered into fantastical arches and spires, and still others are overturned, revealing bellies of smooth, glass-like jade. It feels like walking through a ruined city of the gods, a slow-motion migration of monuments moving with the heavy, unstoppable momentum of the tide. As we thread our way through the congested grandeur of the alley, the waterway narrows further, the cliffs rising steeper on either side. We enter the Lemaire Channel. This is a place of such breathtaking, claustrophobic beauty that it is often called the Kodak Gap. Visualize a passage so narrow that it feels as though you could reach out and touch the black rock walls on either side. The mountains here shoot straight up from the water, their peaks disappearing into the mist, their flanks hung with heavy glaciers that look ready to drop at any moment. Because the channel is so protected, the water is often a perfect mirror. Look down at the reflection. The black cliffs and white snow are doubled, creating a Rorschach test of nature. You are floating in a kaleidoscope of granite and ice. The silence here is amplified by the walls, the sound of your own breath, the splash of a penguin, the crack of a glacier. Everything echoes. The stillness of the water creates a sense of profound peace, a feeling of being held in the cupped hands of the mountains. The light here is soft and diffused, filtering down from the high peaks, casting the channel in a twilight gloom even at midday. It is a sanctuary of verticality, where the world is defined only by how high the rock goes up and how deep the water goes down. From the salt water of the channel, we drift inland to the dry, rocky expanse of the Right Valley to witness a fleeting miracle of summer. We stand on the banks of the Onyx River, in a continent defined by frozen water. The sight of flowing, liquid fresh water is a shock to the senses. This is the longest river in Antarctica, yet it flows for only a few weeks a year. Visualize the brown, dusty banks devoid of greenery, looking more like a landscape on Mars than Earth. Through the centre runs a clear, cold stream, fed by the meltwater of the coastal glaciers. It is a seasonal pulse of life. The water tumbles over smooth stones, making that familiar, comforting, babbling sound of a brook, a sound you haven't heard in thousands of miles. Dip your hand into the current. It is startlingly cold, but it is moving. It carries no fish, but it carries microscopic life, a bloom of orange and green algae that paints the riverbed in vibrant streaks. To sit by the onyx is to watch the continent sweating, releasing a brief sigh of liquidity before the winter freezes it solid again. It is a reminder of the fragility of the seasons here, where a river is not a permanent feature, but a temporary event, a precious gift of the sun that vanishes as quickly as it appears. On the banks of this temporary river, hiding amongst the dark rocks, we zoom in to the microscopic level to find the largest permanent land animal on the continent. It is not a bear or a wolf, but a tiny creature known as Belgica antarctica. It is a midge, a small fly, no larger than a grain of rice. But look closely at this tiny survivor. It has no wings. Over millions of years of evolution, this insect learned a harsh lesson. In the windiest place on Earth, to fly is to die. If it had wings, it would be blown out to sea and lost. So, it gave them up. It surrendered the power of flight to gain the power of belonging. Visualize this tiny, dark purple insect crawling slowly over the moss and the rocks. It is a master of endurance. Its larvae can freeze solid for months, turning into tiny icicles, only to thaw out and resume life as if nothing happened. It teaches us the wisdom of grounding, of letting go of the things that do not serve us in our environment. By staying low, by hugging the earth, by simplifying its form, it has conquered a continent that kills almost everything else. It is a humble, wingless king, ruling over the stones with a quiet, crawling determination. Leaving the microscopic world of the midge, we travel back to the coast to Cape Royds, to enter another wooden sanctuary of human history. We step inside Shackleton's hut. While Scott's hut was a base for science and tragedy, this hut feels different. It feels like a waiting room for adventure. Step onto the volcanic rock and open the heavy wooden door. The space inside is smaller, more intimate. It has an air of unfinished business. Crate upon crate of provisions are stacked to the ceiling. Tins of meats, vegetables, and the famous cases of McKinley's whiskey, which were discovered frozen under the floorboards a century later. The atmosphere here is one of cozy desperation and brotherhood. You can imagine the men huddled around the stove, the smell of burning coal and damp wool filling the air. The light filters in through small windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the cold air. Unlike the solemnity of Scott's hut, there is a feeling of resilience here, a spirit of "we will make it home." It is a place where the warmth of human optimism battled the freezing gales outside. You feel the ghosts of the past laughing, pouring a drink, writing in their journals, waiting for the ice to break, waiting for the ship, waiting to live. Just outside the door of this hut, scattered in the black volcanic ash of Mount Erebus, lies a geological treasure hunt. We look down to find the Erebus crystals. These are large crystals of Anorthoclase feldspar, thrown out by the volcano during its eruptions. Picture the dark, monochrome ground, the black ash absorbing the light. But here and there, catching the low angle of the sun, are sparkles. Kneel down and pick one up. It is a perfect rectangular prism, dark and glassy, sometimes growing up to 3 or 4 inches long. They are sharp-edged, encased in a thin shell of volcanic glass. They feel like jewels from the centre of the Earth. Because the magma under Erebus cools so slowly, these crystals have time to grow large before they are ejected. Walking the slopes of the mountain feels like walking on a field of diamonds in the rough. The contrast between the soft, powdery ash and the hard, geometric crystal is tactile and satisfying. It is a reminder that the volcano is a factory of beauty, creating structure and order deep within its fiery throat and scattering it across the snow for us to find. Hopping over these crystals with a frantic, infectious energy, we meet the chinstrap penguins. While the emperors are stoic and the Adelies are busy, the chinstraps are the mountaineers of the bird world. Visualize a penguin with a stark white face and a thin, perfect line of black feathers running under its chin, looking for all the world like it is wearing an old-fashioned police helmet. They are loud, aggressive, and incredibly agile. We watch them as they return from the sea. They do not nest on the comfortable beach. They choose the high, rocky slopes far above the water. Watch them climb. They use their beak as an ice axe, gripping the rock, and their claws to scramble up steep cliffs that would challenge a human climber. They are driven by a restless energy. Their colonies are cacophonies of shrieking calls, a pulsating mass of black and white against the grey rock. Being near them is invigorating. They are the embodiment of tenacity. They choose the hard path, the high ground, the steep climb, and they do it with a noisy, pugnacious joy that fills the empty silence of the cliffs with the sound of life. The rocks that these penguins climb are not rough by accident. We look closer at the stone beneath their feet to witness the glacial polish and striations. This is the fingerprint of the ice sheet. Run your hand over a bedrock outcrop. The stone, which should be jagged and raw, is smooth as glass. It feels slippery, polished to a high sheen. This smoothness was created by the glacier moving over it for thousands of years, the ice acting as a giant polishing cloth, using the sand and silt trapped within it to sand down the mountain. Look closer at the polish, and you will see long, parallel scratches, striations. These are the scratch marks left by larger rocks dragged across the surface by the ice. They point the way. They tell you exactly which direction the glacier was moving 10,000 years ago. Touching this rock is touching the memory of the ice. It is a tactile connection to the immense weight and friction that shaped this continent. It feels cold, hard, and impossibly smooth, a testament to the slow, grinding patience of nature. We follow these scratch marks back down to the water's edge, where the ice meets the sea, to witness a process that drives the entire world's climate. We immerse ourselves in the formation of Antarctic bottom water. This is the heaviest, coldest, distinct water mass on the planet. Visualize the sea ice forming on the surface in the Weddell and Ross seas. As the salt is rejected, the water beneath becomes incredibly salty and cold. It becomes dense, heavy. Imagine this heavy water beginning to sink, cascading down the continental slope like an underwater waterfall. It flows down into the abyss, spreading out across the bottom of the ocean, creeping north. This water is the lungs of the deep sea. It carries oxygen from the surface down to the darkest trenches, allowing life to exist in the abyss. Feel the slow, powerful momentum of this current. It will travel for centuries, flowing into the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, cooling the equator, regulating the globe. You're witnessing the start of a 1,000-year journey. It gives you a sense of planetary connection, realizing that the cold water touching the coast of Antarctica today will one day whisper to the coral reefs of the tropics. And finally, walking along the shoreline where this heavy water begins its journey, we spot a creature that looks entirely out of place. It looks like a white dove or a pigeon, stepping gingerly over the penguin guano. We have found the snowy sheathbill. This is the only land bird native to Antarctica that is not a penguin, but unlike the penguins, it does not have webbed feet. It has chicken-like feet, unsuited for swimming. Visualize this stark, white, plump bird with a strange, bumpy sheath covering its beak. It hops and struts across the rocks, a scavenger, a thief, a survivor. It hates the water. It will flutter anxiously to avoid getting its feet wet. It lives by stealing krill from penguins feeding their chicks, or scavenging whatever washes up on the shore. There is something charmingly rogue about the sheathbill. In a land of specialized swimmers and divers, it is a generalist, a scrappy opportunist that refuses to leave. Watching it tiptoe across the snow, looking for a meal, you feel a kinship with its stubbornness. It is a bird that shouldn't be here, yet here it is, thriving on the edges, the white ghost of the colony, finding abundance in the scraps of the frozen world. Watching the scrappy determination of the snowy sheathbill, our gaze lifts slightly to meet the stare of the true lord of these coastal skies. Hovering on the updrafts with a wingspan that commands respect, we encounter the South Polar skua. If the penguin is the citizen of the ice, the skua is the pirate baron. Visualize a bird that is not white, but a rich, mottled brown, the colour of driftwood and earth. It is a striking contrast to the endless pale landscape. The skua is heavy, powerful, and fiercely intelligent. Look into its eyes. There is a calculating sharpness there, a recognition of you as another being. It does not flutter, it patrols. It flies with a slow, deliberate cadence, banking smoothly over the colonies, watching for opportunity. This bird is the great connector between the pole and the rest of the world. While penguins are tethered to the ice, the skua is a wanderer that travels thousands of miles across the open ocean, yet it chooses to return to the harshest place on Earth to raise its young. Imagine sitting on a rocky outcrop, feeling the wind ruffle your hair, and watching a pair of skuas land nearby. They throw their heads back and call to each other, a loud, complex series of cries that assert their territory. There is a wild, prehistoric dignity to them. They are the hawks of the Antarctic, fearless and bold, reminding us that even in this frozen desert, there is a hierarchy, and there are eyes watching from above, sharp and brown against the blue sky. The rocky perch upon which the skua rests is itself a mystery. We look down at the stone and realise it does not match the ground beneath it. We're sitting on a glacial erratic. This is a boulder, perhaps the size of a house, composed of pink granite, resting precariously on a bed of grey limestone, or sitting alone on a field of white ice. How did it get here? It is a hitchhiker of history. Thousands of years ago, a massive glacier plucked this stone from a mountain range hundreds of miles away, carrying it within its icy belly like a swallowed seed. As the glacier flowed and eventually receded or melted, it gently placed this boulder down in a land where it does not belong. Run your hand over the rough surface of the erratic. It is a lonely monument to movement. It stands out like a sculpture placed by a giant hand. These stones alter the landscape, creating landmarks in the featureless white. They give the eye something to anchor onto. There is a quiet poetry in their placement. A rock from the interior now resting near the sea, a silent traveller that has finished a journey taking 10 millennia. It feels solid, immovable, and permanent, a heavy pause in the flowing narrative of the ice. Where these lonely boulders sit exposed to the relentless katabatic winds, they create a unique architectural feature in the snow. Look at the base of the rock, and you will see a wind scoop. It looks like a perfect crescent-shaped moat carved around the windward side of the stone. This is the physics of air made visible. As the wind rushes across the plateau and hits the boulder, it is forced downward, accelerating and scouring away the snow at the base before swirling around the sides. It creates a smooth, hollowed-out trench that is often deep enough to stand in. Slide down into this scoop in your imagination. Inside the moat, you're sheltered. The rock above you blocks the gale, and the walls of snow dampen the sound. It is a strange, cosy pocket of stillness, right next to the violence of the wind. The walls of the scoop are polished hard as marble, curving elegantly like the inside of a wave. The light down here is blue and dim. It is a hiding place, a natural foxhole carved by the very element you are hiding from. Resting here, leaning your back against the foreign stone, you feel the protection of aerodynamics, safely tucked into the calm eye of the turbulence. Venturing out from the shelter of the scoop onto the surface of the glacier, we look down at the blue ice and notice something that looks like black dust scattered across the surface. But this is not merely dirt. These are cryoconite holes. Focus on a single speck of this black dust. It is a mixture of soot from volcanoes, dust from deserts thousands of miles away, and tiny fragments of meteorites. Because it is dark, it absorbs the heat of the sun more than the surrounding white ice. As it warms up, it melts a vertical shaft straight down into the glacier. Peer into one of these small cylindrical tubes. It is filled with crystal clear liquid water, and at the bottom, resting a foot or two down, is the sediment. But this is not just a hole. It is a microscopic aquarium. Inside this cylinder of water, protected from the freezing wind by the ice walls, life thrives. Bacteria, tardigrades, and rotifers swim in this tiny private lake. It is a world within a world. The lid of the hole may freeze over at night, sealing the ecosystem in a capsule of ice, only to melt again in the morning sun. Walking across the glacier, you realize you're walking over millions of these tiny vertical silos of life, each one a miniature biosphere powered by a speck of dust and a ray of sunlight, drilling its way slowly into the history of the ice. As we lift our eyes from the microscopic worlds at our feet to the vast, shimmering horizon, reality begins to bend. We witness the hallucination of the high latitudes known as Fata Morgana. The air here is often layered, with cold, dense air sitting near the ice and warmer air resting above it. This acts as a lens, refracting the light and distorting distant objects. Look out toward the coastline. You see an iceberg, but it is not floating in the water. It is hovering in the sky, upside down. Above it, right side up, is another iceberg, stacked like a totem pole. Mountains that are below the horizon are lifted up and stretched into towering flat-topped castles that look like fortresses of gold and white. It is a superior mirage, a spectacle that has confused sailors for centuries, leading them to map islands that do not exist. The horizon seems to breathe and wallow. The landscape becomes fluid, a dreamscape where the laws of gravity seem suspended. It is hypnotic to watch the slow morphing of these shapes. A ship on the horizon stretches vertically, becoming a skyscraper, then splits in two, then vanishes. It reminds you that in this place of extremes, you cannot always trust your eyes. The atmosphere is a magician, painting changing pictures on the canvas of the sky, turning the solid world into a floating, shifting fantasy. Within this shifting, misty atmosphere, where the light plays tricks, we turn away from the sun to face a wall of fog, and there, etched in the white mist, is a ghost. We see a fog bow, unlike its cousin the rainbow, which is born from rain and bursts with the 7 colours of the spectrum. The fog bow is born from the tiny, microscopic droplets of polar mist. Because the droplets are so small, they cannot refract the light into separate colours. Instead, they diffract it, creating a broad, luminous arc of pure white. Visualize this pale, spectral bridge arching over the snow. It looks like a gateway to another dimension, a halo of white fire against the grey sky. Sometimes, if the light is just right, the very inner edge has a faint fringe of violet, and the outer edge a whisper of red, but mostly it is a bow of light and silence. It feels incredibly rare and personal, as if it has appeared only for you. It frames the emptiness of the landscape, turning the void into a stage. Walking toward it, it recedes, always keeping its distance, a phantom archway that invites you deeper into the mystery of the mist, promising that there is beauty even in the absence of colour. Navigating through this white mist, we reach the edge of the pack ice, where the chaos of the broken floes creates a labyrinth of concealment. Here, hiding in the most inaccessible reaches of the pack, lives the hermit of the Antarctic seals. We are lucky enough to encounter the Ross seal. This is the least known, least seen, and most mysterious of all the seals. Visualize a creature that is smaller than the others, with a sleek dark coat and a head that looks almost bird-like. It has enormous eyes, vast and dark, adapted for hunting squid in the deep, low-light waters under the thick ice. It possesses a grace that is distinct, a shyness that keeps it far from the noise of the penguin colonies and the aggression of the leopard seals. But the true wonder of the Ross seal is its voice. It is known as the siren of the ice. It does not bark. It produces a complex electronic-sounding song that includes sirens, trills, and pulses. Watch as it throws its head back. Its throat inflates, not like a balloon, but like a cobra's hood, expanding its neck to twice its normal size to resonate the sound. The song vibrates through the water and the air, a high-pitched, warbling transmission that sounds like a satellite signal. To hear it is to hear the secret language of the deep ice. The seal looks at you with those saucer-like eyes, then slips silently backward into the water, vanishing like a spirit, leaving only the echo of its electronic lullaby hanging in the mist. We follow the seal's dive not just into the water but deeper, penetrating the ice sheet itself, to discover the circulatory system of the continent. We find the subglacial rivers. We often think of Antarctica as a frozen block, but beneath the miles of ice there is a network of flowing water that rivals the Amazon. Visualize great rivers of liquid water, kept fluid by the heat of the earth and the immense pressure of the ice above. These rivers do not always flow downhill, because the weight of the ice sheet is so heavy, it can actually push the water uphill, forcing it to climb over mountain ranges buried deep underground. Imagine floating in one of these hidden arteries. It is a world of eternal blackness, a high-pressure pipe made of rock and ice. The water rushes silently, connecting the subglacial lakes, moving water from the center of the continent to the sea. It is a hidden lubrication system that allows the ice sheets to slide. Sensing this movement beneath you changes your perception of the solid ground. You're not standing on a static block. You're standing on a floating skin, atop a hidden, rushing world of water that flows in the dark, sliding the continent slowly toward the ocean. Emerging from the thought of the dark underground rivers, we look up as the polar night fully descends, revealing a sky that offers a view into our galactic neighborhood. We focus on the Magellanic Clouds. These are not weather clouds, they are dwarf galaxies, satellite companions to our own Milky Way, visible only from the southern hemisphere. To the naked eye, they look like two detached luminous fragments of the Milky Way, torn off and drifting alone in the Black Sea of space. The large Magellanic Cloud and the small Magellanic Cloud glow with a soft, misty light. They are stellar nurseries, teeming with young, hot blue stars. Lie back in the snow in your mind and gaze up at them. There is a sense of cosmic vertigo. You're looking across 160,000 light-years of emptiness. They look like smudges of fluorescent chalk on a blackboard. In the absolute clarity of the Antarctic air, they feel close enough to touch. They are the constant companions of the South, guiding stars that have watched over the ice for millions of years. It puts the isolation of Antarctica into perspective. You're at the bottom of the world, looking out of the window of our galaxy, peering into the deep architecture of the universe. From the drifting galaxies, we bring our focus back to the drifting ice of the coast. We end this part of our journey in the quiet, sculptural stillness of an iceberg graveyard. In certain shallow bays, like Plano Bay, the depth of the water is just shallow enough to trap the large icebergs. They run aground, stuck fast in the mud, while the rest of the ocean flows past them. This is not a place of death, but of transformation. Once the bergs stop moving, the waves and the wind begin to work on them like chisels. Visualize a sculpture garden of immense proportions. There are arches of blue ice that look like fragile glass bridges. There are towers that lean at impossible angles. The waterline melts faster than the air, creating mushroom shapes and precarious balancing acts. The water here is calm, protected by the barrier of the grounded ice. It is a maze of white and blue geometric shapes. As the sun moves across the sky, the shadows play amongst the ruins of the ice giants. The sound is a gentle dripping, a soft splashing as small pieces fall away. It is a place of rest for the travellers of the sea. They have journeyed for years from the ice shelf, and here they pause, slowly returning to the element from which they came. Drifting through this gallery in a small boat, or in your dreams, you feel a profound sense of peace. It is a museum of water, where the art is constantly changing, melting and evolving, held in the quiet embrace of the shallow bay. And finally, floating amidst the silent, melting sculptures of the iceberg graveyard, we arrive at the deepest truth of all. we realize that Antarctica is not merely a continent of rock and water. It is the Earth's memory. This vast white expanse is the planetary subconscious, the keeper of all secrets. Every snowflake that has fallen here for the last 1,000,000 years has captured a tiny sample of the world as it was in that precise moment. Visualize the ice sheet not as a frozen block, but as a colossal book with translucent pages, written in the language of isotopes and dust. It remembers the ash from volcanoes that erupted before humanity learned to speak. It remembers the chemistry of the air when the pyramids were raised. It remembers the solar flares that lashed the atmosphere in the deep silence of prehistory. It holds the record of every summer and every winter the Earth has ever known, preserved in a library of cold that is indifferent to the passage of time. To stand on Antarctica is to stand on the archive of our existence. It is the one place where the past is not erased by growth or decay, but is simply buried, deeper and deeper, waiting to be read. It is the witness that never blinks. There is a profound spiritual weight to this realization. You're in the presence of the oldest, most patient observer on the planet. It teaches us that nothing is truly lost. The history of the world is safe here, locked in the vault of the blue ice, guarded by the wind and the cold. The silence you hear is not emptiness. It is the holding of space for all that has come before, a quiet reverence for the story of the planet sleeping beneath your feet. And now, the journey is complete. The great white book closes gently. We begin to drift away from the frozen continent, rising slowly, weightlessly, up through the diamond dust, up through the auroras dancing in the velvet sky. The white landscape below shrinks into a peaceful, glowing pearl at the bottom of the world, a sanctuary of silence that will always be there, waiting for you. You're drifting back now, back across the oceans of the mind, returning to the warmth and safety of your own sanctuary. Feel the transition from the bracing cold of the dream to the heavy, comforting warmth of your bed. The blankets feel substantial and soft, a warm embrace grounding you in the present moment. Your body is heavy, sinking deeper into the mattress, releasing the last echoes of tension. The wind has stopped, the ice has settled. There is only the slow, rhythmic tide of your own breathing, in and out, deep and slow. The visions of the blue glaciers, the golden sun, and the quiet stars are fading into a soft white mist in your mind. They are no longer facts to be learned. They are dreams to be kept. They are snowflakes settling gently on the landscape of your consciousness, cooling your thoughts, quieting your soul. You're safe, you're warm, you're deeply, profoundly at rest. The world is quiet and the archive is closed. Let the white silence wrap around you like a soft, heavy quilt. Let go of the images, let go of the words, let go. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now, good night.